They never put this kind of thing in the recruitment brochure. You think you're joining the Navy SEALs to protect your country, to be the silent shadow in hostile territory, taking out threats and getting the hell out unseen. What they don't tell you is that sometimes the threats don't wear uniforms or carry rifles. Sometimes the threats have claws longer than your fingers, eyes that burn yellow in the dark, and a stench like wet fur and rotted meat. My name's Chief Petty Officer Cole Hardin. I've been in black sites across the Middle East, swam with sharks off Diego Garcia, and parachuted into drug lord compounds in South America. None of that shit prepared me for what lives in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We were first called in under the guise of training operations in the backwoods of Tennessee. The kind of mission where everything's redacted and no one makes eye contact at briefing. They just hand you gear, nod toward the helos, and tell you to shut up and go. Unusual predator sightings, is what they said. Civilians missing. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just empty tents and blood-spattered dirt. I remember asking, "What are we really dealing with?" The captain didn't answer. He just looked at me and muttered, "You'll wish you never knew." The team consisted of 6 of us, all Tier 1. Guys I'd bled with. Ramirez, our sniper and joker of the bunch. Anders, comms and logistics. Big Jim was our breacher, muscle with a beard like a Viking. Price, our medic, pale and quiet. Then there was Boone. Stoic, spiritual, the kind of man who said grace before every mission and carried silver bullets taped to his chest rig. I asked him once if the silver thing was a joke. He just looked at me and said, "You ever seen a man get ripped in half from the inside out? No, then keep laughing." We dropped in under cover of night. Fog rolled through the trees thick as soup, and everything felt wrong. No crickets. No owls, not even wind in the branches. Just stillness and the weight of watching eyes. Boone muttered something under his breath in Cherokee. Price crossed himself, and I flipped off the safety on my suppressed HK 416 and kept moving. The camp we found had been torn apart like a tornado had kissed it. Tents shredded. Food untouched. Blood everywhere. But no bodies. Ramirez swept the area with thermals. "Nothing. Cold as a nun's kiss," he whispered. That's when Anders picked up the scent. He gagged. Said it smelled like something had been dead for a week and rolled in shit. Boone looked to the trees. "It's close," he said, "and it knows we're here." The thing howled just before dawn. It wasn't a wolf. I've heard wolves. This was something else. Something deeper, something wrong. Like it echoed inside your chest, scrambled your brain, and clawed at your spine. Ramirez dropped his rifle and puked. Big Jim's hands were shaking. I felt it too, like my body wanted to run in 10 directions at once. We weren't hunting something. We were being hunted. We set perimeter traps at the remains of the civilian camp and bunkered down in shifts, trying to get a grip on what we were dealing with. No fire, no noise, nothing that would give away our position. The mist never lifted that morning, and the trees pressed in around us like silent watchers. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. Ramirez kept scanning with thermals, but he stopped after a while. "It's not showing up," he said. "Like it's not real, or not alive." I didn't sleep. None of us really did. By mid-afternoon, we found tracks. Big ones. Bigger than any bear I'd seen, but not quite human. 5 toes. Long heel. Clawed and deep like something heavy was moving fast. Boone crouched over them, frowning. "Not fresh," he said. "Maybe 2-3 hours. It's circling." That's when we found the tree. 10 feet off the ground, embedded in the trunk, was a tattered ranger hat. Blood dried black on the brim. Ramirez touched it, looked at me and said, "Whatever it is, it plays with its food." We moved camp, deeper into the woods, toward a rocky ridge we could fortify. We needed elevation. As night fell again, I took first watch. The silence was heavier than before. I kept thinking about the missing campers, about what they saw before they vanished. Boone joined me midway through. "This land, it remembers," he said. "My grandfather used to tell stories, not just of monsters, but of something old. Something that doesn't belong here but came anyway." I asked him if he believed that. He just looked at the woods and said, "Now I do." That night, it took Price. No sound. No struggle. Just gone. I heard a rustle, turned, and he was no longer there. His pack lay torn open. Blood pooled in the dirt. We found a trail. Drag marks leading into a ravine. Big Jim wanted to follow, but Boone stopped him. That's what it wants. Separation. I could see it in Jim's eyes. He wanted to tear the trees down with his bare hands. Instead, we regrouped and began tracking, slow and tight formation, Boone whispering prayers with every step. The ravine was narrow and slick, lined with jagged stones. We moved like ghosts. The drag trail ended at a cave mouth hidden beneath a deadfall. Ramirez covered the entrance. "You think it lives down there?" he whispered. Boone shook his head. "It doesn't live. It waits." I pulled my sidearm and flicked the flashlight on low. Inside, the smell hit us. Death, decay, and wet fur. Bones littered the ground. Human, animal, picked clean. In the far corner, Price's vest hung on a root like a trophy. That's when the breathing started. It came from the dark, deep, vibrating the rock around us. I raised my rifle, but my hands felt numb. Something moved in the shadows. Tall, lanky, with 2 long limbs and glowing eyes. Boone grabbed my shoulder and hissed, "Back out. Now." We retreated slowly, step by step. The breathing followed, but it didn't chase. "Not yet. Just let us go." Boone muttered, "It's marking us. We're part of the hunt now." We didn't speak much as we moved uphill, away from that cave and its rancid breath. Boone led, whispering words I didn't recognize. Some mix of Cherokee and something older, something colder. I looked back once and saw nothing. That's what terrified me most. It wasn't stalking us in the usual way. It was inside our heads now, walking just behind reason. Ramirez had gone pale, his mouth a tight line. Big Jim clenched his fists so hard they bled. We weren't seals anymore. We were prey. By dawn, we'd reached the ridgeline and set up a temporary op overlooking the valley. From up there, we could see the forest stretching like a sea of green-gray death. Somewhere out there, it was watching us. Anders was muttering to himself, trying to rig a signal booster from scraps in his pack. "Command's not answering," he said, blinking sweat from his eyes. "I'm getting static. Like, scrambled. Someone's jamming us or the mountain's cursed." Boone looked at him and said flatly, "This place don't want you calling for help." That afternoon, something moved in the tree line below. Fast. Quiet. I scoped it. Saw just a flash of black fur and 2 long limbs sliding between pines like smoke. Boone sat cross-legged, eyes closed, humming low. Ramirez spat. "Why is he praying when we need action?" I shut him up with a glare. "Because this isn't a firefight, Rami. This is something else." Jim chimed in. "We need to kill it now." But no one had a plan. No one knew how. That night, it came for Anders. 1 second he was next to me, tapping keys on his laptop, and the next there was this snap. Like a thick branch breaking under pressure, and he was gone. We rushed the edge, saw nothing but a slick of blood and shattered plastic where his gear had been. Boone hissed through his teeth. "It's thinning the herd." We set motion sensors, claymores, anything we could spare. I didn't sleep. None of us did. I just stared into the dark and waited for those yellow eyes to open again. At some point, I started hearing it. Low whispers in the wind, my name carried like a secret. "Cole. Cole." I shook it off, told myself it was fatigue. But then Ramirez started twitching, mumbling. He was seeing something we couldn't. "My sister," he said. "She died in Zone 9, but she's calling me. She's here." We tried to calm him down, but he bolted toward the woods like a man possessed. Big Jim tackled him, but Ramirez screamed, "Let me go. She's right there. Don't you hear her?" We tied him down after that, Boone carving symbols into the earth around our position. "It's using grief now," he said, sweating. "Memories, weaknesses. This isn't just a beast. It's part spirit, part flesh." Jim laughed bitterly. "Great. We're fighting Bigfoot with a PhD in psychological warfare." But none of us laughed long. By then, we were 3 men down, and the sun hadn't risen in what felt like years. Then, Boone found the tracks again. Leading not away from us, but towards something. A place deep in the park where the land felt wrong, like it wasn't part of this world. "It's drawing us in," he said. "Wants us to see where it was born." I didn't ask what that meant. I just checked my rifle, made sure every round was chambered, and nodded. If we were going to hell, we'd do it armed. The path Boone led us on didn't exist on any map. No trails, no clearings, just a slow descent into something ancient. Every step we took, the forest changed. Trees grew twisted and skeletal, bark peeling like burned skin. The air grew thick, like breathing through syrup. Somewhere in the distance, we could hear drums. Not real drums, but a thudding rhythm in the ground, like a heart buried deep beneath our boots. Even Ramirez, still shaken but tied to our formation, whispered, "This is where it lives." We moved in a triangle formation. Boone at point, me and Big Jim on either side of Ramirez. Our gear felt heavier. The woods pressed in, not with branches, but with intention, like the trees wanted to close behind us. Every now and then, I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye. Black fur, elongated limbs, always just outside our reach. Boone said it was showing us its teeth. I said nothing, just clenched my jaw and kept going. Midday, we found the altar. That's the only word I have for it. A circle of stones, carved with symbols older than anything I'd seen, surrounding a mound of bones. Human, animal, even something larger, unidentifiable. Some had been gnawed, others arranged like they were part of a ritual. Boone dropped to one knee and started chanting in Cherokee again. "This is the heart," he said. "This is where the DOGMAN was called." Big Jim scoffed. "Called? You mean someone summoned this thing?" Boone didn't look up. "Not just someone. A whole tribe, long gone. They wanted a protector. What they got was a curse." As he spoke, the wind died. Complete silence fell over the woods. No birds, no rustle, nothing. Then came the growl. Not loud, not even close, but so deep it vibrated in our chests. Ramirez started crying softly. "I can see her again," he whispered. "She's smiling this time." Boone snapped, "Don't listen, too late." Ramirez jerked free and sprinted into the altar ring. He screamed once, a sound that turned inside out, and then nothing. When we reached the bones, there was no blood, no body. Just his boots. Still laced. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Big Jim pulled out a thermite grenade and tossed it into the bone mound. The fire lit fast and bright, and the smoke twisted into faces. Screaming faces. We ran. Not away, but forward. Into the gully that opened behind the altar, where the ground dipped unnaturally into what felt like a sinkhole. That's where Boone said it would be. Its nest, its lair. The place it came to feed, to sleep, to dream of death. The cave we entered was wrong. Not dark. Red-lit, like flesh turned inside out. The walls pulsed. The air reeked of iron and wet fur. As we descended, Boone slowed, muttering to himself. "This is where the barrier thins," he said. "Where it comes and goes." Big Jim loaded a fresh mag and grinned. "Then let's make sure it never comes back." I didn't share his confidence. I felt it behind us. Not chasing, not rushing, just arriving. Because it knew where we were going. And it was waiting. The further we descended, the less real the world became. My NVGS flickered uselessly, so I ditched them. The cave glowed faintly with that sick red light, casting long shadows that moved even when we stood still. Boone's face was tight with tension, his eyes darting over the walls, muttering low in Cherokee. Big Jim was humming an old country song under his breath. Nerves, maybe, or maybe he just needed something human to hang on to. My grip on the rifle tightened every time that damn humming echoed too long. We found the first skin at the base of a slope. Peeled clean, folded like laundry. It was a man, or had been. Tags read, Wilson K. Forest Service. His skull lay nearby, picked clean. Boone didn't stop. "It's leaving markers," he said. "Trophies. This isn't just a hunting ground. It's a temple." I knelt beside the skin and saw something worse. Claw marks in the stone. Deep, deliberate. It had dragged him down here alive. Big Jim cursed under his breath. "I swear, when I see it, I'm gonna put a full mag in its mouth." We emerged into a chamber so large it felt like we were standing inside a cathedral carved by giants. Bones lined the walls in spirals, and the ceiling pulsed like a living lung. At the far end stood a throne. Not wood, not stone, but something alive. Sitting on it was the DOGMAN. 7 feet tall. Matted black fur soaked in blood. Its snout was long, lips curled back in a smile of too many teeth. And its eyes, those glowing yellow pits, locked onto mine like it knew me. Boone didn't flinch. "This is the one," he said. "It remembers you." I lifted my rifle and fired. Rounds punched into its chest. Thud, thud, thud. But it didn't fall. Didn't even grunt. It rose slowly, impossibly graceful for something its size, and let out a sound that didn't belong in this world. Not a howl, not a roar. Something in between, something laced with memory and pain and rage. Boone started chanting again, louder now, forming a circle of ash around us. "Don't break the ring," he shouted. "If it gets close, we're done." Big Jim wasn't having it. He charged, shotgun raised, screaming like a man on fire. I tried to stop him, but it was too late. The dogman caught him mid-run, lifted him with one clawed hand and ripped him apart like paper. Blood sprayed across the cave, and I swear the thing breathed it in, like it was drinking his fear. I screamed, not in terror, in rage, in fury at the thing that had taken my team, my brothers. Boone grabbed my arm. "It's feeding off that, don't give it what it wants." I dropped my rifle and pulled the flare from my belt. Lit it. The red light flared even brighter, revealing more details. Old carvings, glyphs on the walls, depictions of creatures like the dogman tearing through villages. This thing wasn't just ancient, it was worshipped. Fed offerings. Boone saw it too. This was a pact, he said, made long ago, and someone's still keeping it. That's when we heard the voice, not the dogman's. A human voice echoing through the cave. "You shouldn't have come here, Seal." From the shadows stepped a man, older, in ranger gear, but his eyes glowed faint yellow. His voice was calm. "You don't kill a god," he said. "You feed it." Boone's chant stopped cold. "He's a vessel," he whispered. "A priest." The dogman stepped forward, claws dragging along the stone, and I realized this wasn't a hunt. This was a ceremony, and we were the sacrifice. The ranger stepped into the light, calm as a priest walking to his pulpit. He had the posture of a man who believed in something dark and ancient, something he'd given himself over to. "The Cherokee sealed it once," he said, "buried it under stone and silence. But men like me, we dug too deep. We wanted a protector, and now it protects hunger." His eyes flashed yellow again, and for the first time I understood. The dogman wasn't just some rogue predator. It was anointed, fed through centuries of ritual, sacrifice, and belief. Boone spat at the ground. "You traded blood for safety. You turned this land into a damn altar." The ranger only smiled. "Better a god that listens than one that doesn't. How many tourists have gone missing here, huh? You think that's coincidence? They feed it slow. But you, Navy SEALs, you're a feast." My heart pounded as the dogman circled, claws tapping on stone like a metronome counting down to our deaths. I could feel the fear crawling under my skin, cold and electric. Boone's chant started again, faster now, edged with panic. I tossed him a second flare. "What if we don't kill it?" I said. "What if we bury it again?" Boone lit the flare with shaking hands. "The altar stones, the markings, they're a seal. We need to remake the circle." That's when the ranger lunged. I met him halfway, tackling him into a column of bones. He fought like something possessed. Faster than any man his age should have been. We rolled, fists flying. I cracked him across the jaw with my elbow, and he screamed. But it wasn't pain. It was ecstasy. "Yes," he shouted. "Let it take you." I drove a knife into his thigh, pinning him down. "No gods today." Boone shouted something behind me. The dogman shrieked, a high, bone-cracking howl, and lunged straight for Boone. I pulled my sidearm and emptied it into the beast's back. It slowed, staggered, but kept coming. Boone fell to his knees at the center of the stone ring, slamming his hands into the dust, blood streaming from his nose. "Seal," he yelled. "The flare, now." I didn't hesitate. I jammed it into a crevice at the altar's base and kicked loose the carved bone pile, collapsing it into the seal's shape. The cave shuddered. The dogman froze mid-stride. Its body contorted, limbs spasming, as if some unseen force was wrapping chains around it. It let out a final howl, full of rage, hunger, and fear. And then it collapsed into a heap. Flesh peeled from its frame like smoke in the wind. The ranger screamed once more, then went still, eyes wide open, yellow glow fading to black. The red light in the cave dimmed. The air lost its weight. Silence returned, deep and complete. Boone collapsed beside me. "It's done," he whispered. "For now." I didn't feel relief, just a deep, gnawing ache. Big Jim was gone, Ramirez was gone, and we'd sealed something that should have never existed in the first place. As we made our way out, Boone looked back once. "It'll come again. They always do, when people forget." I nodded, jaw clenched. "Then I won't let them forget. I'll tell everyone who'll listen, and even those who won't." I looked up at the gray dawn breaking over the Smokies. Because gods die when we stop worshiping them. And some things should never be worshipped again. When I was a kid, maybe around 12, I was at a reunion party at my aunt and uncle's house. Partway through the party, all the kids and a couple of the adults got the idea to play hide and seek. The house was a 2-story, and the bedrooms upstairs had a crawl way through a little door behind my cousin's bed. One of the adults thought that would be a great spot and moved the bed so I could open the door and sit inside. He closed the door and pushed the bed back. Sitting inside the crawl space, there was no light, and this was before cell phones had flashlights or internet access. It was eerily quiet. My sister and cousin were in the closet within the same room. For peace of mind, I yelled out to see if they could hear me, and they responded, though it was pretty muffled. Shortly after is when I heard it. A voice which sounded like it was right next to me, with a very deep tone, simply said, "Hey." Even typing this, I'm getting chills, as if I was there. Every hair on my body was on edge. I was scared, but told myself not to panic, as I knew I wouldn't be able to push the door open with then bed up against it. For whatever reason, I decided to say, "Hey," back, but I got no response. A little bit later, the bed was moved, and I was finally free after my little cousin couldn't find me. Flash forward to our next get-together. This time it was just my immediate family and the relatives of that house. We were having dinner, and I ended up telling my aunt about the experience. To my surprise, she became noticeably nervous and asked me to come with her into the crawl space. This was the first time I saw how far it went. We looked inside from both ends of the house, but of course there wasn't anything to be found. Come to find out, when my family and I got home, that same aunt and uncle lived in an apartment years before any of the kids were born. Apparently the master bedroom was rife with supernatural activity, to the point my uncle wouldn't talk about it, according to my mom. I've had quite a bit of encounters, but the circumstances of this one being essentially locked in a crawl space was the creepiest. It was Halloween 2011, and I decided to head to our local graveyard to see what was up. I parked my car on the main road near the open gates, and my friend and I walked the rest of the way. As you enter the graveyard, there's a house on your right, very close to the gates. I'm not sure if anyone lives there, as there is a rusty car just inside the gates as you enter. If you walk down the main road of the graveyard towards the crematorium, which is a new brick building that looks out of place compared to the house, and the old chapel located about a few hundred yards from that house we just passed. So yeah, there's a chapel hidden in the darkness. You wouldn't know it was there if you weren't looking. After we passed the chapel, but were still very near the new crematorium, I saw a ball of orange light dance across the path. Now, being me, I told my friend, who hadn't seen it, but we carried on walking. Logical brain me decides the light must have been from the other end of the road that leads to the newer part of the graveyard, where my aunt and uncle are buried, and possibly a street light from the houses beyond the graveyard boundary wall. Spiritual brain me thinks, yeah, a spirit, whoop, let's go. So we carried on walking, and then I felt this darker than dark presence that just felt pure evil, and I got the feeling that we should leave. I turned to my friend and said, "Something doesn't want us here tonight. I think we should go." His reaction was, "Yeah, I don't feel safe here either." He's not a believer, but if he's picked up on that, then I guess we should go. So we started walking back to the main road. You could see the house, the gates, the streetlights, and safety. We started to run and eventually passed the house and the gates. And then the feeling just lifted. Gone. We walked back to the car and went home. The time would have been approximately 10 p.m. on Halloween night, October 31st. I went back the next day during the day with my son, who was a baby at that time. I walked past the house and chapel and stopped where I think I felt the presence and saw the orange ball of light, and all was calm. I could see beyond the boundaries, and that's it really. Nothing else. One night I plan on going back with a spirit box and cat balls and possibly a voice recorder. So the area my grandparents lived in was somewhat known for Bigfoot sightings, and my grandfather had seen some sign of it. A set of footprints in the snow that strode uninterrupted over a 4-foot fence. Calls from the forest, etc. They live at the edge of a state park in Ohio. I've seen plenty at this point, but back then I hadn't had any experience with the paranormal, at least as far as I knew. Bigfoot fascinated me because of all cryptids. It seemed the most plausible, and I'd spent some of my week there watching documentaries and discussing it with him. Now he wasn't much of a prankster, but it had happened enough that when something actually happened, I thought it was him. I'd just gotten into bed at the end of their trailer. Was there for maybe 20 minutes insomnia when I heard this call outside the window, passing by quickly down the hill. Imagine an orangutan hot, not a loud, just that idle huffing call they do at each other. Pitch that down a ways, and then have it coming from lungs that should belong to a bear or moose. As I said, my first thought was to rationalize, that's Grandpa messing with me, he almost had me too. This thought lasted until I remembered the way the trailer sits on the hill. The bottom of these big windows is sitting 6 feet off the ground. The noise had definitely come from above me in bed, near the tops of the window. So whatever made that noise was 2 or 3 feet higher, and the old guy didn't own any stilts. I wish I'd gone to look, but the realization that something that massive had decided to make a noise right next to me just struck me with paralyzing fear. I was playing around an abandoned area within sight of the trailer later that same week, jumping around rotting beams and poking through whatever was left when I just stopped. There was just a massive, imminent presence behind me all of a sudden. No noise alerted me, I hadn't seen anything move, it was just pressure, that same pressure thinking back on it. Nothing inherently threatening in it, just the sheer weight of the gaze is what got me running. I felt the presence of ghosts, at least one demon, what I'm pretty sure was eldritch shenanigans, and let me tell you, nothing has had the weight of that, the power. It felt more real and present than I think people can be. Anybody else have something like this? Not a sighting, but just like a sense of something, an impossible noise, or just a too close encounter. More southeast, but in the middle of an old-growth forest and minimal folks. It was dark, and a relative drove down to close the chicken coop. When he pulled up, he saw a small white LED-looking light moving erratically above a fence and coop. He thought someone was messing with him, so he called out, "Who's there?" I'm getting a gun, and went to the house to find a gun, couldn't find one. He came back and noticed it was now too high in the air to be a person. He watched it for a moment, called his mom, who told him to throw something at it. He threw a rock at it, and his vehicle immediately died. He ended up locking himself in the vehicle, and the light eventually just wandered off in the trees. I'll keep it short, but a friend and I were at a park on the edge of town in the middle of the night, and we were walking across a field of sorts towards the bathrooms that are located next to a wooded ravine. There's a street light next to the bathroom, and about halfway there, I see this white humanoid figure dash into the woods, and I stop. I ask my friend if he saw it, and he confirmed it, saying he thought he saw something crouching in the grass. We just turned around and quickly left. It's interesting because on the other side of the woods there is more park, and then a cemetery. I'm a northern Illinois resident, and I live in a heavily forested area. Numerous times while out in the backyard at night having a fire or hanging out, we hear what sounds like someone running in the woods. This is usually around 1-2 a.m. The sound is distinctively bipedal and accompanied by heavy breathing. We call out to whatever it is and hear nothing but silence. We shine flashlights and light up the woods pretty well, but see nothing. When we turn the lights off and go back to minding our business, we hear the sound of something running again. A little spooky, to say the least. I never expected my first assignment as a park ranger to land me in a remote corner of the national park, especially not during the off-season. But there I was, assigned to patrol a stretch of land so isolated it could easily be called forgotten. The job had its perks. Solitude, a deep connection with nature. But it also had its dangers. No tourists around meant the wild places had a way of staying wild, and sometimes it felt like the forest was more alive than I'd ever cared to admit. When I arrived at the edge of the section I'd been assigned, The landscape struck me as both peaceful and unsettling. The trees were tall and dense, their trunks twisted like skeletal arms reaching into the sky. Everything felt still, but the weight of the silence pressed against me, making it hard to breathe. The kind of silence that lets you know something's out there watching. I could already tell this wasn't going to be like the other post I'd had. There was something wrong with this place. I just couldn't put my finger on it. As I made my way deeper into the park, I came across an abandoned campsite. At first glance, it seemed like just another forgotten stop, but there was something off about it. A tent, still standing but torn at the seams. A backpack, half open, spilling the contents of its last owner's life onto the cold ground. But it wasn't the disarray that caught my attention. It was the blood. Thin, dark streaks painted across the ground, leading away from the site. A violent struggle had taken place here, and someone had fled in haste. I wasn't alone. That's the feeling that washed over me as I crouched by the backpack, examining the area. My pulse quickened. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight. There was no sign of the person who had been here, but I knew someone had to be. The park was remote, and the chances of someone stumbling across this place by accident were slim. Whoever they were, they had left in a hurry, and something had made them do it. A small journal lay partially buried beneath the debris. I pulled it free with careful hands, fingers trembling slightly. The leather cover was worn, the edges frayed with age and exposure. Inside, the pages were filled with hurried, frantic scrawlings. The words made little sense at first. Disjointed thoughts like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit together. But there was one entry that stood out. I hear them. The voices from the trees. They're calling to me, telling me to listen. But the more I listen, the more I lose myself. They're taking my mind, piece by piece. It's happening. I can't stop it. The forest is alive. I couldn't tear my eyes away from those final words. The forest is alive. It felt ridiculous, but there was something about the way it was written. An urgency that made my heart pound in my chest. I stood up, the journal in hand, scanning the trees around me as if they might suddenly speak. The wind whistled through the leaves, and I felt like they were whispering secrets to one another, secrets I wasn't meant to hear. As I turned to leave the campsite, I heard something rustling in the underbrush, just beyond the trees. It wasn't a bird or an animal. It was too deliberate, too calculated. My breath caught in my throat as I instinctively gripped my radio, ready to call for backup. If there was any backup to call. The park was vast and largely uninhabited, and I was alone. But when I heard the low murmur of a voice, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Help me. I froze, the words hanging in the air, eerily familiar. The voice was deep and cracked, like it had been left to rot in the woods for too long. My pulse hammered in my ears as I took a step forward, my boots crunching the dry leaves beneath me. "Hello," I called out, my voice too loud in the stillness. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves. I swallowed hard, my hand still gripping the radio, but I didn't call for help. Not yet. I had to see what it was first. I had to know who, or what, was out there. I moved cautiously toward the sound, my eyes scanning every shadow between the trees. The voice was faint, like a whisper caught on the wind, but it was there. Just close enough to keep my heart in a constant state of panic. Something about it tugged at my instincts, making every part of me scream to turn back, but I couldn't. Not yet. My duty was to protect these lands, and that meant figuring out what was going on here, no matter how twisted it seemed. As I pushed deeper into the trees, the ground beneath me grew softer, the leaves thick with the scent of decay. The air felt heavier here, as if the forest itself was pressing in, closing around me. The rustling grew louder, more frantic, as if whatever was out there was just as eager to make its presence known. My flashlight cut through the darkness ahead, but the beam barely touched the vastness of the forest. The trees seemed to stretch forever, their silhouettes like dark sentinels watching me, judging me. Then I saw him. He was standing near a cluster of thick pines, his body trembling as if held together by sheer will. His clothes were torn, his hair wild and matted with dirt and sweat. The man was unrecognizable. His face gaunt, eyes hollow, the wild look in them more animal than human. His lips moved, but it wasn't words. It was a string of sounds, a murmur of insanity that sent a shiver down my spine. "You've come for me," he whispered, his voice cracked and hoarse. "I can hear them. They're always watching." I felt a chill run down my spine as I stood frozen in place. Who was this man? What had happened to him? The journal. The words about losing sanity, about the voices from the trees, came flooding back into my mind, and I suddenly realized the depth of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just some lost camper. This man had fallen victim to something much darker, something I wasn't prepared to face. "Hey," I called out, my voice unsteady. "Are you all right? Can you tell me your name?" His head snapped up, and for a moment, his eyes locked onto mine with such intensity that it made me take a step back. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he let out a low laugh, the kind of laugh that didn't belong to a sane person. "They're watching. They're always watching." He mumbled, his gaze shifting to the trees behind me. "The trees. They're alive. They know everything." I took another cautious step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean? Who's watching? Who are you talking about?" The man's lips curled into a grotesque grin, and he shook his head. "It's too late. It's already inside me." His eyes darted from one tree to another, as if he was seeing something I couldn't. "I can hear them. They want me to join them. And now they want you." My stomach twisted, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. This man wasn't just mad. He was afraid. And it was the kind of fear that felt contagious, like whatever had broken him was trying to reach me too. The air felt thick with tension, as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, trying to sound calm despite the rising panic in my chest. "I'm here to help. We'll get you out of here." He looked at me again, his eyes wild and unfocused. Then, without warning, he stepped back, his body jerking unnaturally as though he was being pulled by an invisible force. "No, you don't understand." His voice was frantic now, rising in pitch. "It's not about leaving. It's about them. They won't let you leave. You'll never leave." Suddenly, he lunged forward, hands outstretched, but not to grab me. No, it was like he was trying to pull something invisible from the air, as if he was desperate to catch a hold of whatever it was that was controlling him. His arms shook violently, his body jerking like a marionette caught in a windstorm. I stepped back, my mind racing. I could hear his words echoing in my head. "You'll never leave." And for the first time, I wondered if he was talking about more than just the park. What if whatever had taken him was already starting to reach for me? He took another step forward. This time his eyes locked on me with the intensity of a predator. "You're too late. It's already too late for you. The trees, they want your soul." I froze. The air seemed to thicken, the forest closing in around us. I glanced behind me, knowing I needed to make a decision. Should I try to help him or get out of here before things got worse? But something in his eyes told me it was already too late to turn back. Whatever had taken him, it was still watching. I knew I had to act fast. The man's wild eyes were fixed on me, his breath coming in ragged gasps, and his body trembled like it was fighting against something far beyond his control. I could feel it. Something was off, something that went beyond his insanity. It was as if the forest itself was alive, pushing against me, suffocating me with its unseen presence. The man's frantic words echoed in my ears, the warning growing louder with each passing moment. "You don't understand," he muttered, swaying where he stood. "The forest has a way of taking you, slowly, piece by piece. First your mind, then your soul. You're already here." His voice trailed off into incoherence, his body jerking again like a puppet on tangled strings. I didn't know what to do. I was a ranger, not a therapist, and certainly not equipped to deal with something like this. But the forest, this place, had a way of making you feel like you were never truly alone. I'd always heard the stories, the legends, the strange things that happened when you wandered too deep into these woods. But nothing had prepared me for this. Nothing could. I tried again, my voice steady but strained. "What do you mean, the forest? What's happening to you?" The man's head jerked toward me with terrifying speed, his wild eyes wide with something that resembled both fear and desperation. "The trees, they know you're here. They're calling to me. They'll call to you too. They won't stop." Before I could respond, he lunged again, moving so quickly I didn't have time to react. His arms grasped at me, but it wasn't a simple attack. It was as if he was trying to pull me into his madness. I dodged, stumbling backward, my boots slipping on the loose soil beneath me. My heart raced as I fought to regain my balance. The man, now completely feral, muttered unintelligibly, his voice high-pitched and frantic. "They'll take you," he hissed. "The forest is waiting." I didn't know what to make of it. Was this some kind of delusion, a broken mind spinning out of control, or was there something real in what he was saying? I couldn't tell, but one thing was certain. I wasn't about to let him drag me down with him. I had to get out. My hand found the radio at my belt, my fingers trembling as I fumbled to press the button. But before I could get a word out, a strange sound filled the air, so deep and resonant that it seemed to vibrate the very earth beneath my feet. I froze, looking around in confusion. The trees, with their twisted, gnarled trunks, seemed to sway in an unnatural rhythm, as though they were moving. No, watching me. The man's expression shifted. His eyes locked onto the trees behind me, his mouth curling into a sickly grin. "They're here," he whispered. "They're always here, watching, waiting. They'll take you just like they took me." My pulse quickened as I turned, fear gnawing at the back of my mind. In the distance, through the thick trunks, I thought I saw something move. It wasn't an animal, not a deer or a bear. No, it was something taller, something darker. It was just a shadow, a flicker of movement that sent a surge of cold through my veins. The trees seemed to bend and twist, their branches reaching out like claws. The man, now laughing softly, began to back away, his eyes never leaving me. "You don't know it yet, but it's already too late. The forest doesn't let you leave." Panic surged in my chest as I realized he wasn't going to stop. I had to get him away from me, had to get out of here before whatever was controlling him, and maybe even the forest itself, had the chance to reach me. "Listen to me," I shouted, my voice louder now, desperate. "You need to calm down. We're going to get you help, okay? Just stay with me." But the man only laughed, the sound unnerving and hollow. He stepped back, then turned, running off into the trees with surprising speed, disappearing into the thick darkness of the woods. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to gather my bearings. The air was thick with tension, heavy with a feeling that something wasn't quite right. The voice of the man echoed in my mind. "The forest doesn't let you leave." And that was when I understood. The trees weren't just watching us. They were listening. They were waiting. I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to know what was happening here. What had happened to the man, and why he had been driven to such madness. The words from the journal, the warning in the man's voice, all pointed to something deeper. Something ancient. Something that had been here long before any of us. I gathered my courage, my mind racing with questions. I couldn't leave without answers. I had to follow him. I had to know what the forest had taken from him, and what it was planning to take from me. I didn't wait long to follow. There was something primal about it. The way the man's words echoed in my mind, pulling me deeper into the heart of the forest. He had disappeared, but I could still hear his frantic whispers in the silence that followed. The air seemed colder now, like the woods were closing in, swallowing up every trace of light. I gripped my flashlight tighter, the beam cutting through the dark, but it felt like I was being swallowed whole by the forest itself. Each step I took felt heavier, like the ground was pulling at my boots, urging me to stop. The trees, thick with age, seemed to watch me, their bark twisted and gnarled as if they had witnessed centuries of secrets. There was a palpable sense of unease, an undercurrent of something ancient lurking just out of sight. I kept my eyes forward, ignoring the shivers creeping up my spine. As I moved further in, the world seemed to change. The air grew thicker, more suffocating, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, bending in unnatural ways. The forest was alive in ways that made no sense. No logical explanation for the way the trees swayed, or the soft murmur of something just beyond the reach of my senses. I felt like I was being led into something I couldn't yet understand, but there was no turning back. Not now. Then, through the fog of my thoughts, I saw it. A clearing. The trees parted just enough to reveal a patch of ground, and there, in the center of it, was the man. He was on his knees, his back arched, his arms stretched wide in some twisted imitation of worship. His head was thrown back, his mouth open in a silent scream, as if the very act of breathing was a battle. His eyes, wide and unblinking, fixed on something I couldn't see. I took a step forward, but then I stopped. The air around me shifted. It wasn't just the wind. It was something more. The forest seemed to hum, a low vibration that rattled in my chest, and for a moment I felt it. A pull. a tug. Something was calling to me from the depths of the trees. "Stop," a voice whispered, a voice that didn't come from the man. It was like the wind itself had spoken. My stomach tightened as I looked around, but I saw nothing. The man's body jerked violently, snapping me back to the present. His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw nothing but madness. He grinned, a grin too wide, too unnatural. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "It's already too late for you. It's already inside you." I felt a chill crawl up my spine, and my instincts screamed at me to run, to get away from this place. But I couldn't. Something deeper, something far more primal, kept me rooted to the spot. I had to know. I had to understand what had driven him to this state, and what was waiting for me in the shadows. I forced myself to approach, my boots crunching on the dry leaves beneath me. As I stepped closer, the man's words became more frantic, more desperate. "They're coming. They're always coming. They know you're here." He shook his head, his movements jerky and erratic, as if he were fighting some invisible force inside him. "You can't stop them. You can't leave." I had to shake him out of this madness. Whatever was controlling him, whatever had twisted his mind, was still alive in this place. It was in the trees, in the air, in the very ground beneath my feet. I had to break him free, or I wouldn't make it out of here either. I took another step, then another, until I was within arm's reach. The man suddenly lunged, his arms swinging wildly as he tried to grab me. I dodged, narrowly avoiding his grasp, and instinctively took a step back. His breath was ragged, like he was suffocating, and his eyes darted around wildly, never once meeting mine. "They're coming for you too," he choked out. "They'll take you, just like they took me." A rustling noise, low and slow, came from the trees. At first, it was faint, like the wind pushing through the branches. But then it grew louder, sharper, as if someone, was moving through the forest with purpose. Something that was not human. I turned toward the sound, my heart hammering in my chest. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and stretch unnaturally. Then, through the darkness, I saw it. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, standing among the trees. It was humanoid in shape, but wrong in every way. Its limbs were too long, its body bent at odd angles, and its eyes gleamed like pools of darkness. The figure didn't move, not at first. It just watched, its gaze locked on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. The man's voice, now high and broken, echoed in my ears. "You're already theirs," he whispered. "The forest has you now." I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure in the trees. It stood there, still and unblinking, like it had always been a part of the forest, just waiting for me to come closer. The air around me thickened, pressing in with a weight I could barely breathe through. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, a frantic pulse that told me everything I needed to know. The man wasn't wrong. It was already too late. His voice faded into the background as the figure slowly shifted, its body bending unnaturally as it took a single step forward. The ground beneath its feet seemed to shift with it, as if the earth itself was responding to its presence. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. My flashlight flickered again, casting long shadows that stretched like claws across the clearing. "Get out!" The man's scream cut through the silence like a knife. "They'll take you. Run, leave." But I couldn't run. I couldn't even move. Every muscle in my body felt paralyzed, like the trees were holding me in place, forcing me to face whatever that thing was. The figure in the woods took another step, and this time I could see its face. It was pale, almost featureless, save for its wide, hollow eyes that seemed to absorb the light around it. I could feel the gaze on me, like it was stripping me of everything. My thoughts, my memories, my very sense of self. It was like it was feeding on me, drawing something out from the depths of my soul. And then, the ground trembled. The man behind me laughed, a high-pitched, manic sound that echoed through the clearing. "You think you can leave? You think you can escape them? The trees never let you go. The forest doesn't let you leave." I turned my head slightly, and that's when I saw it. A symbol, carved into the ground just beneath the man's knees. It was faint at first, barely visible in the dim light, but as I looked closer, I could see it more clearly. A circle with jagged lines radiating outwards like a star, surrounded by smaller marks that I couldn't immediately recognize. "Look at it," the man whispered, his voice low and strained. It's all part of it. The symbol, the forest, it's all connected. The tremor in the ground intensified, and I could hear something. Movement. From deeper within the forest. The sound of something massive shifting through the trees, pushing through the underbrush with an unnatural force. My stomach churned, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. I couldn't stay here. Not with whatever that thing was coming closer. I took a step back, my mind racing as I tried to piece everything together. The man's warning, the symbol on the ground, the strange vibrations in the air. This wasn't just some random madness. This forest, this place, was a trap. A trap for anyone who wandered too deep, a place where sanity was swallowed whole, where the trees themselves seemed to pull you into their twisted embrace. "We have to get out of here," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. But then, just as I turned to leave, I heard it. The voice, soft and distant at first, but growing louder with each passing second. "Stay," it whispered. "Stay with us." It was like 1,000 voices, all woven together, like the trees themselves were speaking to me, calling to me, their branches swaying in rhythm with the words. I felt a compulsion, a pull, tugging at me from all directions. Something deep inside me screamed to run, but my body refused to obey. I was here, and the forest wasn't going to let me leave. "No," I muttered, shaking my head, trying to break free of the compulsion, but it was too strong, too overpowering. The figure in the trees was moving again, and this time it took a step toward me. Then another, and another. Its limbs stretched unnaturally as it crept closer, each movement slow and deliberate, like it was savoring the moment. "You can't escape," the man whispered again, his voice a broken echo of the madness that had overtaken him. "You're already one of them." I took another step back, trying to gather myself, but it was impossible. The darkness of the forest was closing in around me, and with every breath, the weight of it seemed to press harder against my chest. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to escape this. The thing in the trees was getting closer, its eyes locked onto mine with a predatory hunger. And the man was right. The forest had already claimed me. There was no way out. The rustling sound grew louder, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, the air growing colder. The forest had come alive, and it was pulling me deeper into its grasp. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I won't be like him." But the voice from the trees only grew louder, closer, until I could hear it right behind me. "Stay." I had no time to think. No time to make sense of the madness that was closing in on me. The pull of the forest was stronger now, almost suffocating. My legs felt like lead, my body slow, like I was wading through thick mud. The air grew colder, colder still, until it was sharp, biting at my skin. The whispers, thousands of them, overlapping and indistinct, filled my ears, and I could feel the weight of them, each one pressing on my mind, trying to crack it open. The trees loomed like giants, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands, as if they were waiting to seize me. I spun around, my eyes wild with panic, but there was nowhere to run. The figure in the woods had closed the distance, its face now just inches from mine. The cold breath of it brushed against my skin, sending a chill down my spine. I could see its eyes now, black as the void, hollow and endless. There was no humanity in those eyes, no soul, only hunger. A hunger that could never be satisfied. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came. My throat felt tight, constricted by the air itself. The figure's mouth stretched into a smile, too wide, too wrong, and I could see its teeth. Sharp, jagged, like the roots of the trees themselves. "You can't leave," it said, its voice low and rasping, like the sound of dead leaves being crushed underfoot. "The forest doesn't let you leave." I took a step back, my feet stumbling over the uneven ground, but the creature remained rooted in place. I had no choice. I had to fight. I couldn't let this thing drag me into the darkness. Not like it had done to the man. Not like it had done to so many before. With trembling hands, I reached for the knife on my belt, the cold steel reassuring in my palm. I didn't know if it would do anything. I didn't know if it could even touch this thing, but I had no other option. I had to try. "Get away from me," I shouted, brandishing the knife as though it would ward off whatever ancient evil had possessed these woods. But the creature didn't flinch. It didn't move. It just stood there, its smile widening, its eyes gleaming. Suddenly, there was a sharp pain in my chest. A pressure, like something cold and hard, had sunk deep into me. I gasped, looking down, but there was nothing there. I stumbled back, my hand clutching at my shirt, but the pain remained, gnawing at my insides, pulling me closer to the forest. The man's laughter echoed through the clearing, high-pitched and insane. "You think you can fight it? You think you can escape?" he rasped. "They have you now. You're part of the forest. You belong to it." I couldn't breathe. The pain in my chest was unbearable, like something was ripping me apart from the inside. My legs gave out beneath me, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The whispers were louder now, a cacophony of voices, each one vying for my attention, clawing at my mind. The ground trembled again, harder this time, as if the forest itself was alive and shifting, reacting to my despair. I looked up, barely able to focus, and saw it. The symbol. The one the man had pointed out. The jagged lines carved into the earth, pulsing with an unnatural energy. The center of it was glowing now, a faint, eerie light that seemed to call to me, pulling me into its depths. I tried to crawl toward the edge of the clearing, but the weight of the forest was too much. It held me in place, the darkness around me thickening, suffocating. The thing in the trees was moving again, its limbs stretching impossibly long, reaching for me. I could feel it now, in my bones, in my blood. The forest's pull, its claim on me. The pressure in my chest grew tighter, and I knew I was running out of time. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the crashing waves of whispers. "Help me." But there was no one there. No one to hear. The man's voice was the last thing I heard before the darkness closed in completely. The forest had taken me. I've spent my entire life in the wilderness. 22 years as a park ranger, and I thought I had seen it all. The deep forests of New Mexico, with its dark trees and endless sky, were my domain. It wasn't the kind of place where things went bump in the night, or so I thought. The first time I saw it, I figured it was just my mind playing tricks. Too much isolation, maybe. But over time, I realized something wasn't right. I'll never forget that evening. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the canyon. I was finishing up my rounds near a remote trailhead when I caught sight of something in the distance. A shape standing still at the edge of the forest. At first, I assumed it was a hiker or a camper who'd wandered off the path. But when I looked closer, I felt that cold, sinking sensation in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't a person. I squinted, trying to make sense of the figure. It stood unnaturally still, almost too still, as if frozen in place. Its form was humanoid, but something about the proportions didn't add up. The arms were too long, the legs too thin, and the head. Well, the head was something I'd never seen before. It was almost too smooth, like it had no features, just a blank space where a face should be. I thought maybe it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast just right. But the longer I stared, the more my skin crawled. "Maybe I'm just tired," I muttered to myself, shaking off the unease. But deep down, I knew this was different. I wasn't just tired. Something was off, something far worse than fatigue. I started walking toward the figure, hoping to get a closer look, but as soon as I took a step forward, it disappeared into the trees. No sound, no movement. Just gone. I tried to brush it off, thinking I'd be able to forget about it by morning. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. Standing, watching, waiting. And then I heard something outside my cabin. A scratching noise against the door, soft at first, then louder, like claws on wood. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside, but there was nothing. No sign of anything. The next day, I went to the local sheriff, explaining my strange experience. He looked at me like I was crazy, brushing it off as some sort of wildlife encounter. "Maybe you saw a coyote or a mountain lion. Happens to the best of us." But I knew what I had seen. This wasn't a coyote. I couldn't explain it, but deep inside, I felt the truth creeping in. There was something in those woods, something the government didn't want us to know about. I spent the next few days trying to put the encounter out of my mind. I focused on my daily routines, checking in on campsites, ensuring that hikers stayed on the marked trails. But it was hard to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig underfoot, sent my heart racing. It didn't help that the strange occurrences kept escalating. I noticed more and more signs of something, or someone, lurking nearby. One afternoon, while I was inspecting a remote part of the park near a deep ravine, I stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. It was a strange set of footprints, too large for a human, too strangely shaped to be anything I knew. They were deep in the earth, as if the creature had been pacing back and forth. The marks looked almost like claws had pressed into the dirt, pulling and scraping, as though something had been dragging itself across the ground. But the thing that truly unsettled me was the direction they led, right toward the old, abandoned research facility on the far side of the park. The research facility had been closed for years. I remembered reading about it in some of the old files when I first started working here. The government had supposedly shut it down after they claimed to have completed their tests, but rumors always swirled about what had really been going on there. Some said it was a biological weapons lab, others claimed it had something to do with military experiments. Whatever the truth was, the place was shrouded in secrecy, and no one talked about it. I followed the trail of footprints, my boots crunching on the dry earth. My hand gripped my flashlight tighter, though the daylight made the beam feel unnecessary. As I approached the research facility, I felt an odd chill in the air, as though the temperature dropped several degrees all at once. There was a silence here, a thick, unnatural quiet that seemed to press in from all sides. I had been avoiding this place ever since I started working in the park, but something now urged me forward. Was it curiosity? Fear? Whatever it was, it felt like something was drawing me in. As I reached the rusted gates, I spotted a piece of metal wedged between them. It was a government seal. Old, faded, but unmistakable. And etched into the metal was a symbol I recognized from the reports. A symbol that had been associated with the facility for years. I pushed the gates open, the screech of metal against metal slicing through the silence. Inside, the building was decrepit, long abandoned. Yet, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I stepped over the threshold. Something about this place felt wrong, as though the walls themselves were hiding secrets. And then, as I turned the corner, I saw it. Scrawled across the floor in some dark, viscous substance, a symbol I had never seen before. It was unnervingly similar to the one on the metal plaque outside. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. Whatever had been done here, it wasn't just a government cover-up. It was something darker. And somehow, it was connected to that creature I'd seen. I spent that night sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the image of the strange symbol. The research facility had always been a place of rumors, but this felt different. It wasn't just abandoned. It was as if something had been waiting for me to find it. The thing I had seen in the woods, the creature, whatever it was connected to this place. I could feel it in my bones. The next morning, I couldn't ignore the pull any longer. I drove out to the research facility again, but this time I wasn't alone. Sheriff Martinez had gotten wind of my story. Whether from me or someone else, I didn't know, and had decided to tag along. He'd been quiet the entire drive, his knuckles tight on the wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror as if expecting something to follow us. "What exactly are we looking for here?" he finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge of doubt beneath it. "Something that doesn't belong," I said, trying to sound confident, but even I wasn't sure what I meant. How could I explain it? The creature I saw, it came from here, and I think the government knew more than they let on. Martinez shot me a look, his lips curling into a faint smile. "You sound like one of those conspiracy theorists from the news." I didn't laugh. "Maybe I am, but I've been working here too long, Sheriff. I know when something's off." The moment we stepped inside the crumbling building, a heaviness settled over us. The air was thick, stale, as if the place hadn't been touched in years. Yet there was an unmistakable presence, a weight that made it hard to breathe. We moved through the dark corridors, our footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. Every corner we turned seemed to stretch on forever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. As we reached the end of the hallway, I noticed something strange. Light. Faint, flickering light spilling out from beneath a door at the far end. I could hear the hum of electricity, something I hadn't expected to find in such an old, supposedly abandoned building. Without speaking, I motioned to Martinez, and we approached the door. The light from underneath cast odd, warped shadows across the walls, stretching and contorting in unnatural ways. I pushed the door open slowly, and the sight that greeted us nearly made my heart stop. The room was filled with old, outdated equipment. Computers, machines with flashing red lights, and strange tanks filled with liquid. But in the center of it all, suspended in a large glass container, was something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. Its body was twisted and elongated, with limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly far. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and veins of black and red pulsed beneath the surface. I stepped back, my breath quickening, and that's when I heard it. A growl. It wasn't from the creature, but from somewhere deep in the facility, as if something else was awakening. "We need to get out of here," Martinez whispered, his voice tight with fear. But I didn't listen. Something was drawing me closer to the tank, an unexplainable pull that I couldn't fight. As I stepped forward, the creature's eyes flicked open. Empty, hollow eyes that seemed to lock onto mine. And then it smiled. The smile was the last thing I expected. It wasn't a grin, exactly. It was something colder, more unsettling. Like a grimace frozen in time, a horrible mockery of something human. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, the expression vanished, replaced by an expressionless gaze. But that moment of contact left me shaken. It wasn't just a creature in front of me. It was aware of me. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to run, to slam the door and never come back. But another part, the part that had been chasing the truth all along, urged me forward. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice out. "What is this?" Martinez's hand clutched my arm, his grip vice-like. "We need to leave now," he hissed, tugging me back toward the door. His panic was contagious, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the tank. There was something inside me, some primal urge, telling me to stay, to uncover what had been hidden for so long. And then I heard it again. The growl. This time it was closer. Much closer. I spun around, and that's when I saw it. There, in the far corner of the room, hidden in the shadows, was another shape. This one wasn't confined to a tank. It was free, its twisted form crouching low to the ground, barely visible in the dim light. The thing was huge. Larger than any animal I'd ever seen, its limbs contorted in unnatural angles, its body covered in patches of blackened skin. Its face, if you could even call it a face, was a grotesque mixture of features that didn't belong together. Eyes too wide, a mouth that stretched too far, and sharp teeth that glinted in the faint glow of the machines. It let out another low growl, and I could feel the vibration in my chest. My heart raced. Martinez was right. We needed to leave. But where could we go? This wasn't just a wild animal. This was something engineered, something twisted, and it was clear that it wasn't alone. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Martinez's arm and yanking him toward the door. The growling intensified, and the creature in the corner shifted, moving with a terrifying speed I hadn't expected. In an instant, it was standing between us and the exit. I froze. My breath caught in my throat as I stared into its eyes. Its unnatural, yellow eyes that gleamed with malice. I couldn't think, couldn't move. The only thing I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my ears. Then, the thing spoke. Its voice was like a low hum, a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You shouldn't have come here." The words hit me like a slap. My body moved before my mind could catch up, shoving Martinez toward the door and into the hallway. The creature didn't follow. Not yet. But I knew that wouldn't last long. We were being hunted, and the truth of what was happening here was far worse than anything I could have imagined. As we sprinted through the facility, I could feel eyes on us, following our every move. I glanced behind us, but there was nothing. Not yet. We burst through the doors into the open air, and for a moment I thought we were safe. But the sound of footsteps behind us, the unmistakable thud of something heavy chasing us, told me otherwise. I didn't look back as we ran, but I could feel it. The oppressive weight of whatever was chasing us, gaining ground with every step. Martinez was stumbling, struggling to keep up, but I couldn't slow down. I had to keep moving. The facility's gates were just ahead, and beyond them, beyond this nightmare, was the open road. If we could make it out of the park, maybe we'd have a chance. But as we neared the gates, a screeching sound echoed through the night, so sharp and primal that it sent a wave of terror coursing through me. It was the creature, the one we had left behind. I didn't dare look back, but the sound of its claws scraping against the pavement, growing louder with each passing second, told me all I needed to know. It was close. Too close. "We're not going to make it," Martinez gasped, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "You have to," I shouted, pushing him forward. I didn't have a plan. Didn't have anything but the desperate need to survive. We had to get to the road. We had to get away. But something was wrong. The air felt thick, charged, like a storm was rolling in. The wind kicked up, howling through the trees, and in the distance, I thought I saw shadows moving among the branches. More of them, maybe, following us. Or maybe they were already here, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Martinez stumbled, falling to his knees in the dirt. I turned back, ready to pull him up, but before I could reach him, I saw it. A flash of movement in the darkness. The creature. It was there, standing just beyond the trees, its body barely visible, but its eyes glowing like twin suns in the night. "Go," Martinez cried, his voice shaking. "I'll hold it off." "No, you're coming with me," I shouted, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the resignation. He knew we couldn't outrun it. I grabbed him by the shoulders, hauling him to his feet, but before I could push him forward, a loud crash echoed from the trees. The creature was moving faster now, closing in on us. It let out a deafening roar. More animal than anything human. And for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The world stopped. I could hear nothing but the beating of my own heart, the terror that lodged itself deep inside my chest. And then I saw it. A figure. A man. Emerged from the shadows, standing tall and imposing in the middle of the road. He was dressed in tactical gear, holding a rifle at his side. His eyes were hidden beneath a black visor, but something about his stance told me he was no stranger to this kind of situation. "You're not safe here," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Get moving, now." Before I could react, he raised the rifle, aiming it toward the creature that was closing in on us. I didn't know who he was or why he was here, but in that moment, he was our only chance. He pulled the trigger, and the shot rang out, sharp and sudden. The creature screeched, its body jerking back from the impact, but it didn't fall. Instead, it charged, faster than I thought possible, its claws slicing through the air. The man fired again and again, but it didn't stop. It wasn't enough. "Run!" the man shouted, turning to face us. "I'll hold it off. You have to get to the truck." We didn't question him. We didn't have time. We bolted toward the truck, but as we reached it, I saw the man's shadow fall across the ground. He was there, fighting the creature with everything he had, but the battle was far from over, and we, Martinez and I, were now caught in the middle of something much larger than we ever could have imagined. I didn't look back as I jumped into the truck, my hands trembling as I fumbled to start the engine. Martinez was already in the passenger seat, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. I could hear the sounds of the creature. Its growls, its roars, the heavy thuds of its massive body crashing through the trees, coming closer. But the man, the one who had appeared out of nowhere to save us, was still out there, battling the beast alone. "Go!" Martinez screamed, his voice a strangled whisper. "Drive, we can't help him." But I couldn't. I couldn't just leave him there. I slammed the truck into gear and sped toward the man's location, my heart pounding in my chest. The headlights of the truck cut through the darkness, illuminating the twisted trees and uneven ground. The creature's growls grew louder, but I could still see the man in the distance, standing his ground against the creature, firing at it with a precision that seemed almost unnatural. As we got closer, I could see the man's movements slow. He was getting tired. His shots were becoming less frequent, and his posture was starting to falter. The creature, enraged by the constant gunfire, was closing in on him faster now, its monstrous form practically glowing in the night. I swerved the truck, aiming for the creature, my foot pressing hard on the gas. The truck's engine roared, and for a brief moment, I thought I might actually hit it. But the creature was too fast, too agile. It dodged with ease, its eyes fixed on us now, glowing like two burning coals. "Get out of the truck," the man shouted, his voice strained with effort. "Now, it's not worth it." But I wasn't listening. I couldn't. This was bigger than any of us. I threw the truck into park and jumped out, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Martinez grabbed my arm, his grip tight with fear. "What are you doing? We can't fight that thing." I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled a flare gun from the truck, my hand shaking as I loaded it. The man had been holding his own, but he was running out of time. And now I had a chance to do something. Anything that might help. I aimed the flare gun toward the creature, my aim shaky but desperate. The shot rang out, the flare lighting up the night sky like a sudden burst of daylight. The creature screeched, its body recoiling at the bright light, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It charged again, faster this time, faster than any animal should move. I didn't wait. I grabbed Martinez by the arm and dragged him behind the truck as the creature barreled toward us. But the man was there again, standing in front of the beast, his rifle raised, his face grim. His next shot was the one that finally brought the creature to its knees. It wasn't dead. No, it couldn't be that simple. But it was down, writhing on the ground, its massive body twitching and convulsing. The man stood over it, panting heavily, his face covered in sweat. He turned toward us, and for the first time, I saw his eyes. They were filled with something. Regret, perhaps, or sorrow, but there was also something else. An understanding. "You're not safe here," he said again, his voice low, almost resigned. "None of us are." As I looked at the creature, still alive but incapacitated, I realized something. This wasn't just a freak accident. It wasn't a random creature that had stumbled into the park. No, this was part of something bigger, something far more sinister. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The man looked at us one last time, his expression unreadable. "I'll handle this," he said. "You two get out of here." Before I could protest, before I could ask him who he was or why he was helping us, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. The creature, still alive but barely, let out one final growl before falling silent. We didn't have any answers. We didn't know who the man was or why he had been sent to help us. But one thing was clear. The government's experiments, the creatures, the conspiracy. It was all part of something much larger, and we were caught in the middle of it. And as we drove away, the truck's headlights fading into the night, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. My name is Nico Lone Elk, and I'm a Lakota native born and raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. For as long as I can remember, I've felt a deep connection to the land, the kind that's hard to explain to someone who didn't grow up like I did. The hills, the rivers, the ancient trees, they're not just part of the scenery. They're alive. They breathe, they speak, and if you listen closely, they might even tell you their secrets. That connection is what led me to become a park ranger. I work at Wind Cave National Park, a place filled with breathtaking beauty and deep, dark caverns that wind beneath the black hills like veins in the earth. Most days, my job is pretty straightforward. Leading tours, patrolling the trails, making sure tourists don't do anything stupid. But there are times when things happen that no training manual can prepare you for. The story I'm about to tell is one of those times. It's something I haven't talked about much, partly because I didn't want to remember it, and partly because I didn't think anyone would believe me. But maybe it's time people heard the truth, even if it's just to know what's out there. It was late September, and the leaves were just beginning to change, painting the landscape with splashes of red and gold. I was on a late shift, patrolling the more remote trails on the western side of the park. The tourist season was winding down, so the trails were quieter than usual, and I could feel the chill of autumn creeping into the air. I was driving the park's old Jeep Wrangler, taking my time, letting my mind wander. It was around dusk, and the sky was fading to a deep, bruised purple. I just passed the turnoff to one of the lesser-known cave entrances when I noticed something odd. A flickering light deep in the woods, off the main trail. I pulled over and killed the engine, stepping out into the cool evening air. It wasn't uncommon for hikers to lose their way, especially around this time of day, so I figured I'd go check it out, make sure no one was in trouble. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking towards the light, my boots crunching softly on the fallen leaves. As I got closer, I realized the light wasn't moving. It was just there, flickering like a candle flame, but too bright, too steady to be a regular campfire. I called out, "Hello, Park Ranger, is anyone out there?" But there was no response. The hairs on the back of my neck started to prickle, and I had the distinct feeling that I was being watched. I pushed my way through the underbrush, my flashlight cutting a narrow path through the dark. When I finally broke through the trees, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, in a small clearing, was a circle of stones, arranged in a way that looked deliberate, almost ritualistic. In the center of the circle was the source of the light. A small, bright flame, burning on its own with no wood, no fuel, nothing to feed it. I felt my pulse quicken and I hesitated, part of me wanting to turn around and get the hell out of there. But something made me stay. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was stupidity, but I took a few cautious steps forward, shining my flashlight around the clearing. That's when I saw it. Just beyond the edge of the light, a figure standing in the shadows. It was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen, with long, thin limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly far. I couldn't make out its face, but I could see its eyes. Black and hollow, staring straight at me. I felt my mouth go dry, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I'd grown up hearing stories about the spirits of the Black Hills, stories passed down from my grandfather and his grandfather before him. I'd always thought they were just that, stories. But standing there, looking into those eyes, I realized how wrong I was. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound, but I felt something in my chest, a pressure that was slowly building, like it was trying to squeeze the air out of my lungs. I could feel it probing my mind, searching, like it was looking for something. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the pressure was gone, and the figure was moving. Sliding, almost gliding, around the edge of the clearing. It circled the stones, never stepping into the light, its movements slow and deliberate, like a predator sizing up its prey. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, and I knew I had to get out of there. I took a step back, then another, trying not to make any sudden movements. But then, the thing stopped. It turned its head, and for the first time, I could see its face. Or what was left of it. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its skull, almost translucent, and its mouth was twisted into a grotesque, unnatural grin. And those eyes, those black, empty eyes, were still locked onto mine. It took a step forward, and I heard it whisper, a low, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. I couldn't understand what it was saying, but I could feel the malice in its voice, the hunger. I knew then that this wasn't some lost hiker, or a trick of the light. This was something old, something that didn't belong in this world, and it was hunting me. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, not caring about the noise, not caring about anything except getting as far away from that thing as possible. I could hear it behind me, moving faster than any human had a right to, its footsteps barely making a sound. I didn't dare look back. I kept running, my lungs burning, my legs screaming, until I burst out onto the main trail. I stumbled, almost falling, and caught myself against a tree. For a moment, everything was silent, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd gotten away. But then I heard it. A soft, almost mocking chuckle echoing through the trees. I looked around, but there was nothing there, just the dark, empty woods. I ran back to the Jeep, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the keys into the ignition. When the engine finally roared to life, I floored it, not stopping until I was back at the ranger station. I didn't tell anyone what happened that night. How could I? Who would believe me? I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, that maybe I'd seen a bear or a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew better. I still work at the park, but I don't go near that part of the woods anymore. I've heard stories, whispers from other rangers about strange lights and strange sounds, but I always play dumb, act like I don't know what they're talking about. A few months ago, I ran into an elder from the reservation, a woman named Eliza Two Feathers. We got to talking, and I don't know why, but I ended up telling her about that night. She listened, nodding quietly, and when I finished, she looked at me with those dark, knowing eyes and said, "You saw it, didn't you? The man without a face." I asked her what she meant, and she told me an old story, one I'd never heard before. About a spirit that roams the Black Hills, a spirit that feeds on fear, that draws people into the dark and takes something from them, something they can never get back. I don't know if that's what I saw, but I do know one thing. I'll never forget those eyes, and I'll never set foot in that part of the woods again. So if you ever find yourself in the Black Hills, and you see a light flickering in the trees, do yourself a favor. Turn around and walk the other way. Because some things are better left unseen. It's a strange national park, the one I work at. No problems with the ecosystem whatsoever, no invasive species, no declining populations, and most surprising of all, no poachers. A neighboring park just 100 kilometers from ours is infested with Salvinia, water hyacinth, and has a very low elephant population because of poachers. It hasn't always been like this though, at least that's what I'm told. The head's been working here for 30 years. He says in the 90s, the rivers were so choked with salvinia that almost 10% of all the hippos at the park died from dehydration. There were so many poachers that the white rhino was practically non-existent in the park. The government at the time was extremely poor, so it couldn't help much. Then suddenly in 22 all the problems just vanished into thin air. No more invasive plants. When the rangers at the time checked on the river, they found all the salvinia dead and decaying. The white rhino population magically rebounded, when just a year ago there were less than 200 of them. It was pretty surprising, but I mean no one was complaining. Everything has a cost though, and this was no exception. There were sightings of things, the carcass of a lion, completely drained of blood, trees with faces, murmuring in an incomprehensible tongue, and possibly huge creatures not resembling any animal in the area. This is a collection of all my experiences with these anomalies. June 16, 2008. Jameson, Amir yelled. Coming. What's got you shouting? I asked. I found a carcass. He said, looking visibly pale. That's nothing to be yelling about, I thought. Probably just the work of a lion or some wild dogs. It's an elephant, it's you should just look for yourself. Okay, an elephant carcass certainly is unusual, but I doubt it warrants yelling. With that, he took me to the carcass, leading me further up the lake. A minute later, we arrived at the location. All right, I can see why he was unsettled. If elephants are killed, which itself is very rare, it's usually by lions, and then only by the lions slowly wearing them out with consecutive weak attacks until they can no longer walk and die from blood loss. This was nothing like that. The elephant's lower half was missing. It looked like it was bitten clean in half, the organs and viscera flowing out. The shape of the teeth didn't match anything that lived here. This was my first time encountering one of the anomalies. I don't know what to do. I've never seen anything like this before. How was I supposed to protect the other animals from this monster? Most of all, I was scared for my life. I radioed my boss and told Amir to gather the other two and stay inside the cabin, and not to come out for anything. I stood out on the porch nervously glancing at the trees, jumping at any sound I heard. Yes, Jameson? Anything the matter? She asked. Yes, ma'am. It's just that. There's a carcass, an elephant's, bitten clean in half. I said, gather everyone in the cabin and do not come out until I'm there. She said urgently, yes, I already did that. Good, now wait for me. We huddled in the cabin, glancing out of the windows every few seconds. Hey Jameson, this isn't real, right? You're playing a prank, aren't you? Sid said skeptically. I'm afraid not, Sid. This is very real. Poor kid, he just joined 3 months ago. I remembered my first 3 months at the park. I could barely deal with lions and crocs. This kid had to deal with a monster that bit elephants in half. I saw something, Amir yelled. Probably just a wildebeest scared away by your yelling, Amir. I said, no way, this thing made the top branches of the tree rustle, too big for a wildebeest. All right, now I was spooked. I took a look out of the window and swore I saw a large, thin shadow dart out of my sight. But maybe I was just imagining things. I had just seen something surreal after all. People tend to see things after an experience like that. But something deep inside me told me not to go anywhere near the tree line. Get away from the windows. Close those curtains. Keep your rifles close. I yelled. Doesn't matter if it was real or not. I want us to stay safe. I was right, wasn't I? Why would you do this otherwise? Amir said wide-eyed. Maybe. I wouldn't risk the guys getting nervous and making a fatal mistake. An hour passed with us just huddled together, hands on our rifles, just waiting for it to tear through the cabin. A sharp, shrill sound rang through the air. I almost shut the door, but it was just the doorbell. Looking through the peephole, I saw it was the boss. I let her in as soon as she entered. I saw the team reflexive relaxing. They trusted her a lot. She was the one with the most experience, the most dependable. She'd brought her shotgun with her. That meant business. Show me the carcass. I looked at the tree line, expecting something to move, but nothing happened. Seems like whatever was there before was gone now. I led the boss to the side of the carcass. Oh, this looks horrendous. We need to deal with thing before it bites anything else in half. No surprise at all, typical of her. Shouldn't we leave quickly? Animals don't usually abandon their carcasses for long, right? Sid said, glancing around nervously. That's right, kiddo. But this isn't a normal animal by any means, is it? Yes, Boo. Don't worry, I'll just check the carcass for any clues, and we'll be gone in 5 minutes. He stayed silent after that. I noticed he had his arm on his rifle. The boss bent down and stuck her hand into the carcass. I resisted the urge to puke. A bit of digging around later, she pulled out a completely intact tooth. It was gigantic, almost as large as a banana, and there were serrations on the outer edge. Dealing with these anomalies for 6 years teaches you where to look, eh? Nobody said anything. With a tooth that big, the beast had to be at least twice the size of a giraffe, if not larger. The next few days went by in a flash. We would find new corpses by the river each day: rhino, hippo, boar. The thing never ate the carcasses, only bit it in half and run away to God knows where before the sun came up. "We won't get anywhere like this. We need to stay the night," said the boss. I couldn't help but agree, but it was too dangerous. What was the guarantee that the thing wouldn't decide to take a few more victims for the night? True, it's dangerous, but there aren't any other options. We can either stay the night or let this thing roam the park freely. Acknowledging this, only Jameson and I will stay the night. You two stay in the cabin. We'll radio you if there's any problems. That night, we got our equipment and situated ourselves about 100 meters away from where we found the carcasses every night, behind some foliage. We had night vision goggles on, didn't want to risk alerting whatever this thing was of our presence. Whatever this thing was, it was smart. It's the middle of winter and water is scarce. Animals have to come to the water holes to drink or die of thirst. Predators exploited this by waiting near the water holes and picking off easy prey. The first few hours went by fairly quickly. Nothing of interest happened. Hippos grazed along the banks of the river. Herds of elephants came and went. There weren't any predators in sight. That was good for us, but it also meant that something was wrong. This was the largest lake in the park. There were always predators here. Their absence means that something scared them away, something larger, stronger. 4 hours into the search, I heard a hippo baying. "You hear that?" I asked the boss. "Yep, it's coming from the general direction of the corpses. Must be that thing," she said, pointing to the spot. I turned my goggles to where she was pointing. A large male was baying wildly into the darkness. I couldn't see anything. I turned my goggles in the general direction of the hippo's baying, but there wasn't anything there. The hippo just continued frantically baying before suddenly turning around and running at top speed in the opposite direction. Thunderous footsteps ran behind it. I strained my eyes, but I couldn't see anything. There was simply nothing behind it. But a hippo wouldn't just run from nothing, would it? And the footsteps were very real. "Come on, we gotta go," the boss yelled. "Are you out of your mind?" I yelled back. But it was too late. She was already running after the hippopotamus. Swearing, I got up and started running too. The footstep became faster and faster until they suddenly stopped. The hippo's screaming was louder than ever, and it felt like it was coming from somewhere above us. A loud crunch. Dead silence. We returned the next morning to half a hippo. "Hey, there's something in the ground here," Amer said, pointing to a dinner plate-sized circle in the ground. There were several more a bit forward, almost like the footsteps of a sprinting animal. The length of each step seemed gigantic, almost 4 meters apart from each other. The footsteps were in the exact direction. The hippo ran last night. "Seems like last night wasn't a complete waste," said the boss, following the tracks. The tracks led all the way to the tree line where they disappeared under the dense vegetation. It kills its prey, then runs back into the tree line to hide during the light. "This thing is creepy," Sid said while stepping a ways away from the tree line. "We didn't see it in our goggles last night, so you think this thing is invisible?" I asked. "Probably not. A lot of these anomalies can't actually be caught on camera, but then again, it could be invisible," she said. "Why can't they be caught on camera?" Easy way to explain why no one outside the park knows about the anomalies. Authors these days, so lazy. "What? Well, we've got to kill this thing." "How do we even know it can die?" I asked. "We don't, just have to take the chance." There was a cold breeze blowing into the woods. I was squatting behind a large bush. About 20 meters to my right was the boss with her rifle trained on the tree line. Sid and Amer were on either side of the wood, ready to shoot if anything went wrong. It gets dark here at 5 p.m., so we had to get into position by 4. Last night, the thing attacked at 3 a.m. No reason to believe it wouldn't attack earlier today. It started raining heavily at 8, just perfect. The hippos started running, again from nothing. I wouldn't risk pointing my flashlight at the thing. The thunderous footsteps became faster and faster until they stopped. A loud crunch. All 4 of us shot together, pointing our flashlights at the sound. Thin, black rods, 7 meters tall at the shortest. Then they moved, a short jerking motion as if they moved a body they weren't made for. I tried pointing my flashlight at the thing's face, but the light didn't even reach its body, much less its face. All we could see were its legs. Thud, something hit the ground, half a hippo. It took a step forward, but then seemed to think otherwise, turning around and running into the trees. We didn't see any half-eaten carcasses after that, but we occasionally see circular markings in the ground. Part 2. This was one of the more horrifying experiences I've had with these anomalies. It's one of those things that sends a chill down your spine, makes you look over your shoulder just to make sure there's nothing following you. May 3rd, 2009. If you look to your left, you'll see a herd of wildebeest stopping to take a drink from that watering hole. In a river that big, there's bound to be some crocs. If we're lucky, we'll get to see one on the hunt. Almost as soon as I had finished saying that, a croc lunged from the surface of the water, catching a wildebeest right in the face, drawing gasps and shrieks from the crowd. It then started turning its body in a circle. Aptly named the death roll, this move tore the victim into bite-sized chunks that the crocodile could then easily consume. This riled up the crowd even more. "What do you say we take a break?" the boss said, addressing the customers. "Is that safe? Aren't there a bunch of predators here?" asked a concerned father holding his 4-year-old. I could understand why he was concerned, but in general, it's best not to bring a 4-year-old to a safari. Don't worry, we've chosen a location that predators seldom visit, and even if they do show up, we have these," she said, patting her rifle. That seemed to calm him down. It was a quick 15-minute break, stretch our legs and get back in the Jeep. It's dangerous to stay out of a vehicle for too long. The rest of the safari went pretty smoothly. We saw a pride of lions, a couple of giraffes, and even a honey badger. During the drive back to the exit, the parents of that 4-year-old seemed a bit anxious. It was about an hour until dark, and we had reached the exit. We bid all the customers farewell and started getting in our cars to drive back to our cabins. The parents of the child came up to us and asked us to wait. The child was nowhere in sight. So, our child wasn't on the bus after the break, and he was cut off by the bosses yelling, "Your child wasn't on the bus. You choose to tell this to us now. What the hell? How the hell did they not notice that till now? What the hell kind of parents were they? Yes, we know, but she usually disappears. We thought she was just somewhere on the bus," the mother said, looking guilty. The boss sighed, looking disappointed and exasperated. "Jameson, gather up Sid and Amer. We have to go search for this kid. What's her name?" "Amy." I told both of them to stay right here in the guard booth until we came back and not to go out for anything. I didn't really have high hopes for this child. Night is when the predators come out, and it was almost dark. Nevertheless, I got in my Jeep and we drove to the place we got off for a break. It was pretty far from the exit. By the time we got there, it was so dark we couldn't see 2 feet in front of us. This ruled out any possibility of looking for her tracks. "We'll split up. Each one of us will go in one direction. Grab a flashlight and make sure you do not yell out for her. That'll just attract the attention of predators or worse things." I went right into the woods, the boss backtracked, Sid went west and Amer went north, in the direction of the river. My last encounter with that giant thing shook me up pretty bad, so I felt very uncomfortable going into the woods, if not scared. At the very least, there aren't many predators in the woods. It's been almost half an hour of me stumbling through the woods. The clouds covered the moon, so it made the already dark night even darker. Without my flashlight, I wouldn't have been able to see my own hand held in front of me. All the while, I had this strange feeling that something was watching me. I did have mild paranoia, but this was different. It felt like it was coming from somewhere far away, like someone was looking at me through the scope of a sniper rifle, and I didn't have any means to protect myself from the inevitable shot. I slowly started moving to the edges of the wood. It made no sense for me to come here. Why would a scared kid go into this dark and creepy place? I would have stayed clear of this place during the night when I was her age. Soon after I saw the place where the trees ended. It was still a ways away, but I was hit with a wave of relief when I saw it. Then I heard it, a soft whispering from the center of the wood. No, not whispering, a melody. It sounded marvelous. It sounded like home. I needed to go there, I had to. It would solve all my problems, fix all my mistakes. It's heaven, I'm sure of it. I began blindly running through the wood. All I knew was that I needed to make it to the center. Branches smashed against face, twigs clawing at my cheeks, but I didn't care, I just kept running to the center. My thighs burned. If I wasn't motivated by this otherworldly singing, I'm sure I would have dropped to the ground right there from exhaustion. Finally, I crashed through the last row of trees. What awaited me on the other side was no heaven. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Gigantic. It was all I could think of looking at the massive being that faced me. 3 times as tall as the other trees, its giant face etched into the bark. Smiling, laughing at my idiocy for being drawn here, the ground erupted into fragments, revealing gigantic roots. They tried grabbing me, but I was faster. I ran straight for its face. Laughing, it opened its mouth wider, as if taunting me to get inside since I was as good as dead anyways. I ignored it and ran farther to the left where it couldn't see me. I grabbed its bark and started to climb. At the very least, it would take longer to catch me up here, long enough that I could call for help. I was a third of the way there and well out of the root's reach. Thud, something massive hit me on the back, knocking the wind out of me. I lost my grip and fell. I was 30 feet up. I'd die. The ground was rushing to meet me in less than a second, but just when it looked like I was going to die, a huge root spurted from the ground and grabbed me. It had saved me. I looked at its face, expecting to see a genuine smile or compassion. Evil, pure evil. Oh, it was smiling all right, a smile you would see on a sociopathic murderer's face. Opening its mouth wide, it pulled me inside with exaggerated slowness, as if to taunt me. Slowly, I was being pulled further and further inside. The smell was horrendous, rotting vegetation and flesh mixed with the smell of blood and sap. Its teeth were concentric circles. I imagined myself being turned to mush in this being's mouth. The sun was rising. It was beautiful. The fact that this was probably the last sunrise I would see was very much on my mind. They were growing slower, the movements of its branches. It was taunting me even more, so I thought. Surprisingly, it grinded to a halt like a chainsaw running out of fuel. Its eyes stared into space like it didn't see me. The branches coiled around me unfurled, sending me face first into the ground. Its mouth remained open though. The boss said she didn't know about the giant man-eating tree when she sent into the woods. I don't really care though, I'm just happy to be alive. I recently came across your video from years ago about the invisible manta ray. I have had a similar experience in the past, but instead of being outside, it was inside my house. I saw it floating in a high corner, almost like a living creature. It seemed to be analyzing me, which really freaked me out. I tried not to look at it, hoping it would disappear, and eventually it did. I've considered various explanations for what I saw, such as a creature that lives in the air, similar to those in the sea. I've even thought it could be a UFO or an angel. It was such a bizarre experience that I never bothered to look it up, but stumbling upon your post has brought back those feelings of fear and fascination. I just wanted to share this with you. I just want to share a couple of my own fairy encounters that I 100% believe to be true and not my imagination. I'd love to hear if anyone has any other similar stories. In the first grade, I slept over at my friend's house. We had engaged in a lot of fairy hunting activities, more like trying to summon them. We made fairy houses, watched Tinkerbell, chanted. Anything you could imagine. So I wake up and check my surroundings to see if anything had changed since I had gone to bed. In my peripheral vision, I see a little figure more or less hovering above the ground, smaller than a finger. It was black and had wings. My shoe, with laces, was sitting on the ground, and the bedroom door was open. The figure flew out the door, but on its way out, it grabbed my shoelace and pulled my shoe onto its side and closer to the door. Unfortunately, my friend did not see it, and she still does not believe me because her sister had been the one responding to our fairy letters the whole time. But it would have been impossible for her sister to have done it. The second time I saw one around 5th grade, it was a very similar experience. I was outside in the carport when, once again, I saw something in my peripheral vision. A small black figure hovering above the ground, flying very fast. I saw it go into some short shrubs. It was not windy, and I heard and saw it push the leaves out of its way. My sister was there, but once again, did not see it. Lastly, in high school, I dove back into fairies. I researched them and did all the things to try and interact with them again. I was outside during twilight with my friend, literally talking about them when we heard the most magical, peculiar sound, which, to us, sounded like it was coming from an old tree stump. Imagine if Maybell Flowers' Lily of the Valley could ring, and there were 1,000s of them. That is what we heard. A soft and higher-pitched sound. We both heard it. We went to investigate where it was coming from, and there were no birds or bugs that we could see. Neither of us had heard a sound like it before, nor have we heard one since. Honestly, hearing this sound is even more convincing than actually seeing them the times before. My brother and dad told me this story of their experience after they had gotten back from one of their snowmobiling trips. We live in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm not sure which mountain they went up to for their snowmobiling this night. They were riding their snowmobiles down a road with fresh snow, and it hadn't snowed for a couple of hours. As they were riding, they ended up encountering what appeared to be a perfectly built, brightly lit campfire, right in the middle of the road, in the middle of the dark. There were no footprints leading out on any side of the fire, no car tracks, and no sign of any human. Just a picture-perfect campfire. There wasn't any way snow could have covered any signs of people being around. As I mentioned before, it hadn't snowed for a while. They didn't stick around to find out though, as they were thoroughly creeped out and quickly continued on their way. I think about it frequently. They had no explanation for where the campfire had to have come from. Before I start, I have to preface this by mentioning I've always been extremely skeptical of anything paranormal. However, there were a couple of things that happened when I was younger, and I wanted to ask anyone in this sub if they have had an experience with something similar. Nothing too crazy, but the first one happened when I was about 14-15 years old in the back room of my family home in Australia. The room was pretty new at this point and was separate from the house. It was built on the site of our old garage or shed. Two of my friends were staying over, and one of them was asleep on the couch while my other friend and I were awake, and I was trying to get to sleep. We were arguing about something trivial, and he was doing his best to provoke me and push my buttons. I can't remember exactly what he was saying or what we were even arguing about, but due to the incessant nature of his prodding, I do remember being quite pissed off to the point where I felt a certain amount of anger. Just when I felt like I wanted to hit him, a medium-sized black pillow between us, he was on the couch about 2 meters away, and I was on a bed on the floor, quickly levitated, and then flew across the room at speed, hitting the door. We both bolted outside and asked each other what the heck we just saw, haha. We attempted to try and retrieve our other friend from the room, but he was fast asleep and did not want to be woken up. The other time something similar happened was probably around the same time. I was in the computer room or study doing some homework, and I could hear my dad and brother arguing in the hallway at the other side of the house. Just as I could hear the yelling get louder, the door to the room I was in flung open very, very hard and slammed against the wall, leaving a dent. I immediately got up to check, but there was no one around. I went to the other side of the house to ask them why they slammed the door, but they both looked at me like I was just taking the piss or teasing. There was no way either of them did it due to the spot in the house they were at the time. Mainly, I am just curious about the theme of both of those occurrences. Both happened during arguments, so maybe a ghost or spirit hated people arguing, or there was just a strong energy from us at the time that affected the metaphysical. I've been thinking about this ever since I saw it as a kid. This was probably around 2000 to 2001 because I remember telling my friends at school about what I saw, and they thought I was making it up. I grew up in North Jersey, and I shared a room with my younger brother at the time. We had bunk beds, and I slept on the top bunk. One night, I think it was fall or early winter, there was a pretty loud storm, and it was raining pretty hard. The sounds of the rain on the roof was pretty loud from what I remember. Our house was right across from a strip mall, so there were sounds of semis coming and going maybe 2-3 times a day to stock the grocery store. So I was pretty good at recognizing the sound of them. But this night, it sounded like the semi was driving on top of gravel right outside the house. It was a different sound than the rain. It was so loud and bizarre that I remember waking up. It definitely wasn't thunder either. From what I can remember, I just was laying awake, and from out of the corner of my eye, I see what I thought was a laser pointer pointing through the window. This is giving my chills typing this out. It wasn't just one thought, it was a triangle of dots kind of scanning my room. It happened in like 2 seconds and then it was gone. So our bedroom was on the second story of the house and our window faced the backyard with woods behind. So it's not like someone could just be shining the laser pointer in because of the angle of how it moved through the room. I was on the top bunk watching as it moved, as if the incident's angle was above my elevation, but from outside. Could this have been a drone? I have such a hard time believing that because it was raining so hard. I doubt even a helicopter would be cleared to fly in a storm like that. What the hell did I see that night? We live in Poland on the Czech border. This is relevant because there aren't many large, predatory mammals around. A few nights ago, we took our off-road vehicle into a nearby forest that we've been in many times day or night. We parked up and walked across a bridge to other side of the woods, which are surrounded by mounds, probably old war trenches. First thing I notice is the complete silence. The only sound was the crunching of dead leaves as we walked. Second thing I notice, all of the grassy plants or shrubs on the ground had been crushed and were facing the same direction, as if a herd of buffalo came down from the mounds and trampled them. As we're walking closer to the mounds, suddenly we hear this heavy thud on the ground -5 meters away towards the mounds, like a 60 kilograms weight just landed. We don't see or hear anything else. We decide to go back to the bridge, which is 20 meters away. When we get there, still on the side of the mounds, we stop and shine our flashlights at the forest. We don't see or hear anything. About 30 seconds later, we begin to cross the bridge, still with our flashlights pointed at the forest. But now in a bush about 3 meters away are two sets of round, yellow eyes staring at us. The first set of eyes is 1.52 meters from the ground, and the other set is about 1 meter. We had just shined our flashlights in that exact spot, and we're still in earshot of this bush. How did this thing move so quickly without making noise? We walked the rest of the bridge backwards while shining lights at this bush whole time. These eyes are watching us jump into the vehicle and get the F out. Luckily, it didn't follow us. Whatever this was stopped, stared, and stayed behind the bushes on the other side of the bridge. I can't tell if it was after us, or if it was just making sure we left its side of the bridge. We went back yesterday in the daylight. There were no animal prints near that bush and no signs of disturbance, although we did find some animal bones on top of the mounds. I thought camping in an RV was supposed to be safe. Have you ever had one of your favorite activities completely ruined for you, maybe forever, due to a negative memory associated with it? I do. I don't think I'll ever be able to sleep outside of anything that remotely resembles a house again after one night in late June of 2019. My boyfriend, Tim, and I had been together for about 2.5 years and actually met due to some mutual friends who, like both of us, loved being outdoors. Hiking, biking, kayaking, camping, you name it, we'd do it and probably have done it. Now, we're not really adverse to getting dirty or smelling horribly after spending days in the wilderness, but I would say that we try to avoid it if at all possible. For that reason, we decided, soon after moving in together, to buy a decent-sized RV trailer. He already drove a truck very useful for carrying outdoor gear or accessing remote-ish trails. So we invested a solid chunk of change in a 20-foot trailer. It was surprisingly pretty nice. I won't say it was the Ritz-Carlton of the camping trailer world, but it was better than sleeping on the ground with bugs and dirt and who knows what else. The back of it had a bathroom with a toilet, shower, and window. The middle had a kitchen and couch that folded into a bed, and the front had another bed. No frills, but it got the job done. Because of the size of RV beds, we typically would use both beds if it was just the two of us, but we could squeeze into front bed together if necessary, or if we were in the mood. Starting in the spring of 2019, we took this thing all over the western half of the US. We both had jobs that allowed us to work remotely doing this before it was cool. So we had some pretty epic road trips for those first few months. Around Memorial Day, we wrapped up our trip and came home for a while, though had plans to head to my parents' house for the 4th of July. We lived on the West Coast, they lived back in the Midwest, so it'd entail a couple of days of driving. Rather than just driving as fast as we could, we decided to bring the trailer and made a week out of it, leaving near the end of June, with plans to see the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, Petrified Forest, and a whole slew of other stops along the way. On our 4th day of the trip, after we'd done most of our sightseeing, we pulled over at an RV park somewhere east of Albuquerque. Now, I would like to apologize to any New Mexico residents that may read this, but we weren't exactly getting the best vibes from the state thus far. Most of the people had been friendly, but there were like 100 too many "stop driving drunk" signs for our liking, so we weren't exactly eager to stay if possible. Our accommodations for the night were on the outskirts of a small town, the kind where the streets were all numbered and one main avenue through town had the gas station, general store, and church on it. If you've ever traveled DS, no matter what part of the country you're in, you've been through hundreds of these. We rolled in as the sun was beginning to waver and drop below the brown, dusty mountainous peaks in the distance, creating a hazy light at dusk. We'd been able to establish a good routine. I got the steps and awning on the trailer set up, while Tim emptied the gray and black water tanks, for lack of a better term, our used shower water and poo, respectively, and replenished the clear water tanks. The campground was set up in a couple of large circles, mostly empty. There was a couple of large, 40-plus foot RVs set up on another side, and a few older couples at a fire pit in front of one of them, probably some people enjoying retirement, and a few other camping spots taken by vehicles or camps of varying sizes and elaborateness. The left side of our trailer was parallel to some thick brush and trees, so the right side, the one with the door, opened into the rest of the park. As I stood facing the RV, with all 5 foot 4 inches of me trying to reach and pull the awning down, I heard a hum of a motor approaching behind me. I turned to see a man on a quad bike approaching. Probably just some guy wheeling around because he's bored, I thought. I resumed work at the awning. I heard a shout behind me over the whine of the engine. "Need a hand?" I glanced over my shoulder and gave a half smile. "No thanks, I got it." The man got off the bike anyway. He stood on the opposite end of the awning from me, reached up and pulled, extending the cover over the porch of the trailer. Thanks," I said sheepishly. He nodded. I eyed his clothing. He had a blue polo shirt, khaki shorts, and a black baseball cap on, with some sort of logo on it. He also had a belt with what appeared to be a gun. His eyes were sort of small and beady, and darted quickly around. There was a brief moment of silence as we gave each other a once-over. He squinted his eyes. "I'm Marco, I work security here," he said suddenly. "Oh, well, thanks," I replied awkwardly. This guy was definitely making my spidey senses tingle, not in a good way, but I couldn't really figure out why. He just sort of walked away, without saying anything else, hopped back on the bike, and left, looking back over his shoulder and locking eyes with me for a few seconds before he left. I stood there for a minute, pondering. He's probably just kind of a socially awkward, weird dude, I reassured myself, mentally, going back to finishing up the task at hand. I felt an arm reach around my waist and grab. I jumped, letting out a sharp yelp. "Sorry," I heard Tim's voice behind me. I sighed, spun around, and smiled, rolling my eyes at him. "A little jumpy tonight, aren't we?" He laughed, kissing me. I playfully slapped his shoulder. "Come on, let's get some dinner started," I said, opening the door to the trailer. As we ate a delicious, nutritious meal of hot dogs, Easy Mac, and pickles don't ask, I told him about my newfound friend, Marco. "He doesn't sound from weird to MFME," Tim said with a mouthful of hot dog. I raised my eyebrows and laughed. "Run that by me again," I giggled. He swallowed, wiping his mouth. "I mean, what's so weird about him? He stared at you." "I don't know, I just got the wrong vibe from him. And besides, how many RV parks have we ever stayed in that have security?" He laughed. "That would be none, but to be fair, we've been saying the whole time how weird of a state this is. Besides, I doubt the owners would let some creep run around pretending to be security." He had a point. We cleaned up from dinner, got ready for bed, and were soon out cold in our separate bunks, the only light coming from the moonlight outside that lit up the gravel parking lot. Tim took the front bunk, I took the rear bunk, which was right behind the door. I awoke to the sound of the engine, the same one I heard earlier when putting the awning up. I rolled over and looked at the display of the clock on the microwave. 1:48 a.m. Ugh, I just wanted to sleep, and a TV Magi out there was on patrol. "I'm sure it's completely necessary for you to be doing that right now," I thought facetiously. I shut my eyes, but the engine persisted, coming closer and closer to our trailer. Then, suddenly, it shut off. Silence. Finally, I get back to sleep. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. There was a tapping at the window literally right next to my bed. If I rolled over, my face would be a few inches from the glass. I could hear a faint, low, male voice from outside of the window. "You need to come outside right now," he kept repeating it too. I rolled onto my back, slow OWOY, and peeked out of the corner of the blinds. "You have to come outside." It was tough to see in the darkness, but the silhouette told me enough. It was definitely Marco, that weird security guard from before. My suspicions went from a slight weird vibe to, I'm about to call the cops on this guy in the span of 2 seconds. Bring your husband too, it's urgent. What? I got closer to the glass. He repeated it again. You and your husband, come out quietly now. Before, I was convinced that this guy was some sort of rapist or something. Now I wasn't sure. He either wanted to murder both of us, or he legitimately needed us for some unfathomable reason. I still have no idea why. Maybe it was that aforementioned impeccable intuition. But I slowly stood up and crept towards the door, glancing over at Tim. He was both fast asleep and probably nude. I decided that if Marco had truly evil intentions, I could scream loud enough to wake Tim and probably anyone in a half-mile radius, so I left him sleeping peacefully. I silently opened the door and poked my head out. Marco stood crouched near my window and turned his head towards me. There's someone in the trailer, Marco said bluntly in a quiet voice. What? I whispered. Yeah, my boyfriend is asleep in there. I had no idea what this guy was talking about. No, there's someone else in there, he hissed urgently. In my half-asleep stupor, I still had no idea what was going on. I stepped down out of the trailer, rubbing my eye, and let the door slam behind me, causing a loud bang. Marco winced and rushed over to the door. I heard a thudding in the back of the trailer, then a shout from within. Marco rushed in, pulling the gun from his hip. I was close behind. A man was standing on the bed that I'd just been sleeping on. He was short, with dark features, a torn pair of pants, and plain black t-shirt. He had long, scraggly hair. His right arm was outstretched, holding a long knife, but he wasn't really pointing it, he just sort of held it. It was pointed sideways, with the bottom of the blade facing the ceiling. That was creepy enough, but as we stepped into the trailer, he looked our way. He opened and closed his mouth a couple of times, before letting out the most bizarre scream I've ever heard. It wasn't high-pitched, it was almost like if Kurt Cobain's drawn-out screaming in aneurysm was done by a guy that made me a serial killer and was currently threatening my boyfriend. Oh shit, my boyfriend. I hadn't even looked at him, though it had only been a couple of seconds. He had pulled the blanket up to cover most of him and was holding a pan, which he must have grabbed off of the shelf next to his bed. Marco held up his gun, and the man took off, running to the back of the trailer, still screaming. The way he ran almost reminded me of an animal. He sort of trotted one leg at a time, leaning forward as he did, but with way more speed than you would expect. The door to the bathroom was opened, which must have been where he had hid. He proceeded through it, and in one fluid action, hopped from the seat of the toilet to the tank, then out the back window, landing somewhere in the bushes below. Marco ran out the door, chasing him around into the woods behind the trailer. I stood in the trailer in a state of shock as Tim sat up in a similar wide-eyed state. I sat on the bed slowly next to him. We were silent for what felt like forever. He exhaled loudly. Yeah, I said. I know what you mean. He smiled slowly. The rest of the night was a blur. The police came and took statements from most of the people staying at the park. The owner didn't sleep there at night. He arrived and apologized profusely, refunding our fee for the night. Marco had chased the guy for a few minutes on foot, but lost him somewhere in the thicket. As far as I know, they never caught the guy, and they had never heard of any incidents similar to ours to where this guy may have been a, to put it lightly, repeat offender. Before we left, I asked Marco how he knew the guy was in our trailer. He explained that he typically patrolled on foot and saw someone in the distance, near the bushes, so he got onto his bike and made his way over to us. Around that time, he saw the guy climb into the bathroom window from the outside. That's when he woke me up at the window, trying to do so discreetly to not alert the creep that anyone knew he was in there. Both Tim and I thanked him repeatedly, but he insisted that it was just his job. The two of us were eager to get out of there, even having only slept for a couple of hours. We drove straight through to my parents' house, taking turns sleeping in the back seat of the truck while the other drove. Our perfect road trip had lost its luster, and we were ready to rid ourselves of any traces of it. Once we had arrived, before even going to my parents' house, the first thing we did was go to sell this trailer. Neither of us had any desire to keep the thing after what had happened, and frankly, I didn't think I would be camping again for a very, very long time. We pulled into the RV dealer and were able to quickly get a salesperson to talk to. After making up some reasons for wanting to sell it, something about needing the money for an addition on our house, I think. We were a few signatures away from the trailer, and hopefully, the associated experiences no longer being in our possession. Now, if you can just get me the title for the trailer, that will be all that we need, the salesman said. I'll go get it while you sign these, I said to Tim. In the glove box of the truck, right? He affirmed. I left the office and opened the passenger door to the truck, leaning on the seat as I popped the glove box open. It was kind of a mess, which was odd, because Tim usually kept it very organized. I rifled around it and found the document that I was looking for. As I pulled it out, a square of paper fell out and landed face down on the floor mat. I picked it up and turned it over, then my jaw dropped. It was a Polaroid photo, dated the night it had happened, taken of me asleep in bed. As I was driving home on the 31st of July 2018 at 1:43 a.m. on Ohio State Route 13, north of Mount Vernon, Ohio, a 7-8-foot tall, skinny, humanoid-like creature ran across the road out of a cornfield across into a soybean field from east to west direction. I noticed the creature in my headlights from 50-75 feet away as I was traveling at a rate of 55-60 miles per hour. As it came out of the cornfield, I immediately let off the accelerator, at first thinking it was a deer, but then I saw the creature walk upright. It was 7-8 feet in height, with a tall, slender body, arms and legs small in diameter, hands and feet looked oversized for its body proportion, small neck with an oval elongated head, being dark tan to light brown skin tone, and had no body hair. The creature slightly turned its head towards my vehicle's headlights, and I saw the creature's black eyes and small mouth just open slightly as it continued to run across the road. It barely took 2-3 steps, and it was across the road at a tremendous rate of speed. I was in total shock and thought I should check it out at first, but then I thought for a second, and being uncertain of what I may have just seen, I had better get out of the area. I lost sight of the entity due to darkness. I am a 24-year USAF retired aircrew veteran with a top secret security clearance. Not to be totally bliss, but would someone please advise me on what I saw, because it still and truly frightened me. This happened when I lived in a children's home in a more remote part of the town in Finland. It was at the start of winter, around the end of December 2017. The house is located in the woods, but has many houses close to each other. I had to walk to a side road in the woods to smoke my cigarette since it wasn't allowed to smoke on the property. It was already dark, but the road was dimly lit by the lights of one of the houses. This is the part I always felt uneasy walking. I was almost back at the house when I started feeling really uneasy again, but this time it was intense. I felt something watching me. I heard a branch break and some leaves crunching and saw this bizarre-looking thing walking from the woods over the road and back to the woods on the other side. It was pale or grayish on all fours, but the legs were weird, like humanoid, but at the same time the knees bent like a dog. The front legs were mostly the same but not so bent. The body was slim and the back was kinda arched like upwards. The head or face is so hard to describe. It was kinda of humanoid too, but had no human features or ears. I focused mainly on the legs because they looked so wrong. It didn't make any sounds or didn't smell like anything. I was close enough to see details, but not close enough to smell if it smelled like anything closer. I stood there, my heart was pounding, and I wanted to scream and run home, but I couldn't because the thing was on the way. It was slow too, like the average human speed when walking. After it was gone, I ran back home and told a friend who told me he always felt uneasy there. What could it be? I really want some answers. I tried to draw it. The legs were slimmer. Alright, I have been having this memory for a long time now. I started remembering only small parts since I was 7, and kept remembering bits and pieces throughout my life. I'm gonna go out and say it. This memory I have is of the other side. There I was in a void. I could not see anything, and I did not have a sense of cold or heat or emotions like anger because I did not have a body. I was there, floating at great speed, toying and playing around since I realized that I was an orb of light. So I was floating there, happy I guess, in every direction, just messing around like a child. The other glimpse of my memory is that of me waiting in line, like in a queue, like at an airport waiting for check-in, a type of queue, and it was white. I guess everything was white, and there were other orbs like me. The other memory I have is choosing my life. I don't know what led me to want to experience life, but I really did not want to miss out since everybody was doing it, and it was kind of like FOMO. So, during the choosing phase, there were beings with me, male energy and female energy, male to my right and female to my left. I was presented with thousands of different planets, worlds to live in. Like literally, there were so many I could choose from, presented like on a screen. In those, I saw a futuristic city like Metropolis and felt that it was a very advanced civilization. On the other screen, I saw a reptilian humanoid being in a cave, or rather, he just got out of the cave to view the landscape. I guess it was night and a dark blue rocky area or world. It was overwhelming to choose just one life, and I did sense that there was a pressure to hurry up. So I was kinda recommended by beings or guides or entities to go to the planet Earth. Then I had to decide which family and year I wanted to incarnate to and what life I was gonna have. There were maybe 3 or 4 options to choose from. So anyway, I was kinda interested, or rather considering choosing options, but I was again recommended to choose one family over the other, or rather, I guess I wanted to at least incarnate in a country or city that was most advanced. I saw glimpses of what that life would be like, and I saw that I would get to experience life in other countries. I saw what my body would look like. So anyway, the advantages of this life would be to get to experience life in other countries, and this life would be much more relaxed in comparison to other options I was considering. But there was going to be suffering internally. Life after 20s, I guess, was going to be a struggle, and I saw I would get to live till my 80s, 90s. I only saw moments or glimpses of the life I am living now. From the point of my orb self, I was excited for this life, I would say naive, and I knew that this was not going to be easy. But it was the easiest from the other options. I also remember telling them that I want to remember, and there were now 3 beings discussing this, and I could not perceive them or did not know what they were saying. Were there always 3, or is it because I did not notice the 3rd one? I don't know, and the male one to my right did not communicate much. It was like professional, like he was doing his job, but the female one to my left was loving or caring. I also sensed other orbs too. They were like me choosing, I guess. I should also mention that the choosing part was happening in darkness or void area. The next memory after that is of me floating over planet Earth, and I felt like there was pressure behind me to hurry up. Through some device or pool or tube thing, I entered, or rather was sucked magnetically, like sucked, and instantly, the first feeling I got was fear. I was shot like a bullet to earth at great speed. I said to myself to remember this memory. I willed it that I want to remember, and there, as I was being bulleted to earth, zooming at the speed of light. From my perspective, I wanted to stop and explore the earth as a floating orb, but I could not control the force. As I was approaching to the destination, I decided I was going to research everything about this planet and feel this freedom again. Then there was a white light, or rather a flash signifying that I already entered the womb, and boom, darkness again. But now it was so warm, and occasionally I felt that I was being fed. That was strange since I, as me, do not need anything such as food or water or air. And after there was another memory of just everything being blue. Another memory begins of me slowly shifting from a third perspective of me perceiving my body to the first perspective. I was excited and ran to the mirror to see. As I looked, I realized that it was not me and I was in a body. I was surprised that I could move my hands for the first time. So there you go, this is my memory from the other side. I lived in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada, which has many of these little swamps or bogs in certain parts outside of town. Usually, not a lot goes on in these bogs as you can't really build in them, and there's not a lot that lives in them except for maybe some frogs and muskrat. Anyway, one Friday night about 7 years ago, I decided to take a break from my university studies and go for some drinks at the local bar with some of the boys. It was a really good night with lots of drinking to be had, and around a bit after 3 in the morning, I decided to start walking home as I only live about 15 minutes away. I was about halfway home when I noticed something unusual at one of these bogs. From what I could see, it seemed there was some kind of light coming from the water. At first, I simply told myself it was probably just my drunk mind playing tricks on me, but alas, curiosity, with the help of some liquid courage, got the best of me, and I decided to approach the light. It is what I saw then that I still to this day cannot make sense of. What appeared to be a giant slug or leech-looking creature started to crawl out of the bog with what seemed like two very muscular front arms. As it crawled out further, I got a better glimpse of its body, approximately 2 meters long. I did not seem to have any hind legs, just its front arms, but did seem to have a slimy underside as it moved quite fast and left behind a somewhat noticeable slime layer. The bioluminescence was coming from a massive bulge located on his forehead and extended down his spinal column. I was completely stunned by what I was seeing and could not move as my body went completely numb. At first, the creature clearly did not notice me as he was headed in a direction perpendicular to mine. I assumed that because he did not initially see me, the creature may not have great eyesight or any eyes at all. It must also had a poor sense of smell as it was not drawn to me. It was only when I let out a foolish and loud "WTF is this thing?" did the abomination stop dead in its tracks and turned its hideous head at me. It was at this point I could clearly see its two large black eyes open up from its eyelids and stare directly at me. As soon as it saw me, its bioluminescence went out, and I was left blinded in the pitch black. I heard a horrific screech almost like a bird scraw, but much lower and sounding like it came from deep in the gut. I could hear the creature start to charge at me as I could hear its large body cut through that tall bog grass. My fight or flight instincts kicked in, and you can be damn sure I chose flight. I picked out the nearest street lamp and ran as fast as I could through the grass till I got to it. When I got back to the street, I was surprised to see no sign of the creature behind me. I'm unsure if it wanted to harm me or just scare me out of its bog, as I had seen it moving at an alarming rate as it initially left the bog water. Surely it could have caught a drunk, staggering 22-year-old man. I went home after that and vowed never to go back to the bog. After I finished my degree, I moved to Toronto and haven't been back since. I still can't come to terms with what I saw that night, and I'm not sure I want to. I'm posting now to get this off my chest and see if anyone has had a similar experience or if they can make sense of this.